Chapter 1762. Cursed Goddess Soul's strongest power was the army of soul demons. It had to be the army of soul demons. Compared to the cavalry of death and even the exiles of District D, the army of soul demons had a great advantage. Not only were they powerful, but they also had a strong defense. Moreover, they were not easily obliterated. Why had the soul demon universe dominated many universes for so many years? Why could they invade many universes and turn them into ruins? Why could they devour the resources of other universes and kill the humans of other universes? It was all because of the army of soul demons. They were the sharp blades of the great soul overlords, the solid fighting force of the supreme soul god. Their terror struck fear into the hearts of countless people. However, today all these stereotypes seem to have been broken by Bufong. He was not even a saint of the Great Path, and yet he dared to face the army of soul demons alone. Was he not courting death? Cursed Goddess Soul sneered in the sky. The soul demons were her strongest trump card. What could a mere chef do to them? Fighting against thousands of soul demons alone? Did this chef think he was the queen of curses? Many nobles thought the same. Although they were amazed by the chef's magical means, no one thought that Bufong could survive the attack of so many soul demons. In their opinion, Bufong's fearlessness of death was extremely stupid. The soul demons were disgusting, evil, and terrible. Countless people were terrified by their names. There were numbered soul demons, the top soul demons, and even soul overlords. They all swooped down on Bufong. Bufong was just a mantis trying to stop a chariot. However, soon, something that many people could not believe happened. The chef was cooking in front of the soul demons. With just a thought, he finished cooking, and one dark dish after another flew around him. They were very familiar with those dark dishes. After all, Bufong's reputation in the whole Void City was extraordinary now. His dark dishes were also something that amazed countless people. The Stargazy Pie, the 18 Hell Curry, and the Death Spicy Strip. They were all familiar with these dark dishes. However, they had never thought that these dark dishes could be used as weapons. Moreover, they were used to fight the soul demons. If soul demons were so easy to deal with, would there still be any trace of them in the universe? Dark Cuisine, Soul hovered in midair, her black veil fluttering in the wind as she narrowed her eyes. Even though he was surprised, he didn't think much of it. In the void, the black-robed great soul overlord, who was holding the hourglass, gave Bufong an indifferent glance. Suddenly, the black-robed man let out a soft cry of surprise. He seemed to have thought of something. It seemed that Pride Great Soul Overlord had been killed by a chef. What was the connection between chef and chef? The fall of Pride Great Soul Overlord set off a violent wave in the soul demon universe. Originally, there were 7 great soul overlords, but now there were only 6 left. Fortunately, Pride Great Soul Overlord had been blessed by the sleeping soul god and was now slowly recovering. They shouldn't be the same chef. This chef's strength is too different. The black-robed man shook his head indifferently. He turned to look at Jean once more. That dog, that slutty and cheap guy, he should not be from Void City. His fighting prowess is comparable to that of a Duke-level expert. Both of them are existences who can fend off an army alone. This is going to be tricky. The black-robed man narrowed his eyes slightly. Then he raised his hand and rubbed the hourglass. The next moment, his body slowly turned blurry. Then, a clone appeared on each side of him. The clone's robe fluttered, but he was not holding the hourglass. Buzz, the clone disappeared in an instant. The next moment, he appeared in front of Lord Go and Hades' era. Lord Go's fighting prowess was outstanding now. After all, he was a heaven god in the chaos space. With a slap of his paw, he could wipe out a large number of cavalry of death. Nether King Air Ha's current strength wasn't weaker than Lord Dog's. Moreover, he had a flirtatious fighting style. Coupled with his slut fighting style, it made the enemy's hearts palpitate. Marquis Langu, the great demon, could not help but feel a little anxious as he watched. He really did not seem to be as slutty as that guy. The void trembled. Lord Go and Hades' era were knocked flying away. They focused their eyes and looked over. They found that a black-robed man had appeared in front of them. The black-robed man had stopped them, and they began to fight. The starry sky gazed as Bufong looked up with a deep look in his eyes. The air was filled with an extremely pungent stench, so bad that it seemed the whole void was about to collapse. Go! Bufong waved his finger and pointed forward. The next moment, the starry sky gazes turned into shooting stars and shot out at high speed. The soul demons did not care about this at all. They only had eyes for Bufong, and they wanted to tear Bufong to pieces. Boom! Boom! Suddenly, the starry sky gazes collided with the soul demons. Countless starry sky gazes spun. The herring heads among them had bright eyes. Every soul demon was attracted by them. Their noses twitched, and when the stench entered their nostrils, they actually felt that it was like a fragrance. It was the ultimate fragrance, an alluring fragrance. The soul demon's eyes burst into dazzling light. A soul demon could not wait to grab a starry sky gazes. He stretched out a claw and grabbed the herring head that had popped up. With a slurp, the herring was pulled out, and the taste of the canned food inside surged. Oh! Every soul demon let out a cry of ecstasy. Damn it! How can it smell so good? The soul demons felt as if their bones had melted. Slurp! A soul demon picked up a herring by its tail and put it into his mouth. The stench of the herring that was pulled out of the starry sky gazes was comparable to that of a nuclear bomb. However, these soul demons were not afraid. They could not wait to open their mouths and shove the herring into their mouths. Slurp! 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 All the starry sky gazes were divided and eaten. They were so excited that they even forgot to fight. Below the restaurant, Xiao AI and the others in the restaurant were dumbfounded. The little girl, on the other hand, twitched her mouth. I knew it. After being stunned for a while, Xiao AI became very excited. Owner Boo, you did a good job. As long as he can hold off the army of soul demons, we still have a chance. Hood's face was also filled with astonishment. She never thought that Bufong's dark cuisine could have such an effect. Or perhaps the nemesis of the soul demons was food? No one had expected this. After all, the soul demons had conquered many universes, and this was the first time they had met their nemesis. Cursed Goddess Soul was stunned. So were the nobles around her. The army of soul demons was stopped just like that. They were tempted by the food and stopped attacking. If this chef keeps cooking this starry sky gazes, will these soul demons never attack? One of the nobles murmured. Bufong seemed to hear the murmur. The corner of his mouth twitched. Keep cooking? Do these soul demons deserve it? Bufong said faintly. His voice rang out. Bufong clasped his hands behind his back. His vermilion robe and hair fluttered behind him. He stood alone in front of the many soul demons. He looked like a little sheep in front of many demons. Bufong raised his hand. The hem of his vermilion robe drooped down. Then Bufong snapped his fingers. Crack! Explode! Bufong said lightly. His voice rang out. The soul demons who had eaten the starry sky gazes paused in an instant. One by one, they raised their heads and roared. Many people were stunned. A soul overlord soul demon covered his throat with one hand and let out a furious roar. The half-eaten starry sky gazes in his hand fell from the air. He was not just a soul overlord. All the other soul demons were the same. All the soul demons who had eaten the starry sky gazes covered their throats with their hands. At Bufong's order, in the blink of an eye, these soul demons' bodies exploded. Boom! Boom! The explosion swept across the sky in an instant. The soul demons' bodies began to swell, and crimson flames began to emerge from their insides. Their bodies were incinerated, and their remnant souls were turned to ashes by the divine flame. The mighty army of soul demons was defeated in an instant. Stunned, terrified, creepy. The experts of Void City were dumbfounded. That was an army of soul demons. Even the army of Void City might not be able to deal with them. And the result? They were killed by this little chef with a dish. The starry sky gazes killed so many soul demons. How is that possible? Looking at the soul demons who had exploded or spontaneously combusted, Some of the people who had participated in the Dark Cuisine Challenge felt a chill run down their spines. They were afraid that they would suddenly explode as well. Was that food really poisonous? Bufong seemed to sense the panic in the crowd. Bufong twitched his mouth. Don't worry. These dark cuisines are only designed to restrain soul demons. Bufong said. His words made many people feel a lot more at ease. However, they were only a little relieved. Who knew if Bufong was lying to them? They could not believe the chef's words now. The army of soul demons was too large. Even with the help of the starry sky gazes, more and more soul demons rushed out of the explosions. Soon, a dark mass swept across heaven and earth. After the initial worry, cursed goddess Soul breathed a sigh of relief. It's just a dish. The strength of soul demons is beyond your imagination. Rumble. As soon as her voice rang out, 3 soul overlords sped toward Bufong. Their goal was to interrupt Bufong and prevent Bufong from cooking the dark cuisine. The soul demons were not stupid. They also recognized that Bufong's dark cuisine seemed to be a fatal temptation to them. If they wanted to stop all this, they just had to stop the chef from cooking. The 3 soul overlords were equivalent to 3 saints of the Great Path. If it were in the past, Bufong might have found it a little tricky to deal with. However, Bufong was no longer what he used to be, whether it was in terms of strength or cooking skills. He shook his hand. 3 spicy strips emerged in front of him. Chili sauce that looked like Earth Prison's fire flowed over them. Death spicy strips. Let me understand, Bufong said. As soon as he said that, Bufong threw out the 3 spicy strips. With a ripping sound, the strips were stuffed into the mouths of the 3 soul overlords. Rumble. The eyes of the 3 soul overlords widened in an instant. You can't bite them. You can't eat them. You have to hold back. You can't eat human food. Why does it smell so good? Even if it smells good, you have to hold back. The 3 soul overlords' eyes were wide with fear. But, at last, they cannot hold back anymore. Their huge mouths and sharp teeth snapped shut. Slurp. The spicy strips were broken in an instant. Slurp, slurp. Why is it so delicious? I feel that my soul is soaring in the universe. I seem to see Lord Soul God waving at me. The 3 soul demons held the spicy strips in their hands and ate happily. Their perseverance was shattered by the deliciousness of the death spicy strips. The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched. The black turtle constellation walk appeared. He pointed his finger forward. The black turtle constellation walk knocked the 3 soul overlords flying. Bang! Bang! The fire burned brightly. In an instant, the 3 soul overlords turned into ashes. The 3 soul overlords, who were all saints of the Great Path, were killed in an instant. Everyone was stunned. Cursed Goddess Soul felt that she had been slapped in the face. Other than the stargazy pie, what the hell was this spicy strip? In the distance, Hades Era, who was fighting with the Black-Robed Man, went crazy. With a single slap, the clone of the Black-Robed Man was sent flying. His eyes seemed to be spewing fire. I think I smell spicy strips. Bufong young man, I smell spicy strips. Nether King Erha's body spun 360 degrees in the air. With a kick in front of the black-cloaked man, he slowly swam toward Bufong's position. Bufong young man, I know you have spicy strips. Give me one, and I will accompany you. Hee hee hee. The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched. Marquis Lang Gu's pupils constricted. I've been fooled by this guy again. In midair, the great soul overlord holding the hourglass narrowed his eyes. With a sway of his body, he teleported in front of Bufong in a flash. Chapter 1763. His vision went dark. Bufong's pupils constricted. He felt an ice-cold aura enveloping his body in an instant. In the blink of an eye, the black-robed man appeared in front of him. In the distance, the army of soul demons had stopped moving. It seemed that the appearance of the black-robed man had deterred them from moving forward. Some soul demons, who were drooling, hurriedly wiped their saliva away. The black-robed man hovered in midair. He looked at Bufong condescendingly. It gave Bufong an incomparable pressure, and this pressure made Bufong squint his eyes involuntarily. The soul demons in the army were all sucking in their saliva, using food to stop my army of tens of thousands of soul demons. "You chef," the black-robed man said, holding the hourglass in one hand. However, before he could finish his words, a figure flew toward him like a shooting star. Boom! Hades Era, who had been swimming for a long time, finally arrived. He landed in midair, charged forward, and knocked the black figure away. "Bufong, young man. Spicy strips. Spicy strips. I smell spicy strips. It's a new spicy strip, not the old one. Why didn't you come to I when you have a new spicy strip?" "As a loyal fan of spicy strips, I feel heartache for you." Hades Era grabbed Bufong's shoulder and shook him. The black-robed man, who was knocked away, was somewhat dumbfounded. After stabilizing himself in midair, he flew into a rage. Who was he? He was the great soul overlord of the soul demon universe, second only to one and above billions of people. "How dare you knock me away? You're courting death," the black-robed man said coldly. The next moment, he raised his hand. A monstrous power of sin filled the air. Rumble. He turned into a bolt of lightning, fell from the sky, and struck Hades Era. Bam! Hades Era was smashed to the ground, creating a huge pit with smoke rising slowly from it. Bufong exhaled. The black-robed man held the hourglass in one hand and pointed at Bufong with the other. He flicked his finger. A black bolt of sinful lightning struck down. The space around Bufong's body twisted. Buzz, the thunderbolt, was immediately deflected by Bufong. Boom! In the pit where Erha was, lightning appeared again and smashed into it. A miserable howl resounded. The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched. The group of people around him didn't know what to say. "That slut, this is retribution." Marquis Langu, the peerless beast in the distance, clapped his hands excitedly. "Who asked you to be more flirtatious than this Marquis? Who asked you to be more unrestrained than this Marquis?" The black-robed man narrowed his eyes. Law of space. The black-robed man narrowed his eyes. He recognized at a glance that what Bufong had just displayed was the law of space. Using the law of space to divert his sinful lightning, he did have some tricks up his sleeve. "You come for the chaos verse," the black-robed man said. Bufong narrowed his eyes. The vermilion robe fluttered, and Bufong's figure hovered in the air. "A chef from the chaos verse. You remind me of someone." The black-robed man narrowed his scarlet eyes, which seemed to be swirling with a terrible aura. "All chefs from the chaos verse must die." Rumble. The black-robed man suddenly went berserk. This was beyond everyone's expectation. Bufong's body tensed. With a shake of his hand, a death spicy strip appeared in his hand, ready to block the black-robed man's path. The black-robed man was also a soul demon, so the death spicy strip must be useful. The moment the spicy strip appeared, bam, the black-robed man, who had just appeared in front of Bufong, was knocked flying again. Like a cannonball, he smashed into a building in the distance. The whole building trembled and collapsed in an instant. Spicy strip. Hades Era's hair stood on end. The law of life swirled around him, and he was unscathed. His eyes gleamed with excitement as he stared at Bufong. Rubble rolled down. In the ruins in the distance, the black-robed man, who had been knocked flying, floated up into the air with a suppressed aura. You're really courting death." Once again, he was sent flying, and it was the kind of collision that he did not expect at all. Yet, he did not die from his sinful lightning. He was even unscathed. This guy, Heaven God Life? The Heaven God of Life of the chaotic universe. The black-robed man really did not expect this. The chaotic universe, the universe that had been wiped out by Soul God with a palm, had given birth to a new Heaven God. The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched as he looked at Hades Era, who would go crazy if he did not give him the spicy strip. Then, he handed the death spicy strip to the latter. "Eat it." Bufong felt somewhat helpless. Hades Era took the spicy strip, grabbed the half-meter-long strip, and slowly stuffed it into his mouth. Then, he stuffed it into his mouth and kept twitching. His movements were unbearable to watch. Whoa! The death spicy strip was different from the spicy strips of the past. It could be called a dark cuisine, and the spicy strips of the past could not be compared to it. Hades' era's face turned red in an instant. His lips swelled up like two fat sausages in an instant. Oh, this feels good. Hades' era's eyes were misty as he enjoyed the delicacy of the spicy strip. In the distance, Master Jinyang's mouth twitched. That was Owner Boo's dark cuisine, the death spicy strip. He almost died from eating it. But this guy actually looked like he was enjoying it. It was really infuriating to compare oneself with others. If he had this calmness, he would have obtained the chaotic energy long ago. The black-robed man was ignored. He was ignored by the heaven god life. Veins appeared on the palm, holding the hourglass of time and space in the distance. Lord Go slapped down with his paw. The exquisite dog paw fell and slapped the head of the black-robed man's clone. With a bang, the doppelganger directly exploded. Although the clone's strength was not bad, Lord Go was heaven god time, who was even stronger than Era. How could a mere clone be able to hold him back? Lord Go strode forward with his elegant cat-like steps. Then he slapped his paw at the black-robed man, holding the hourglass of time and space. The dog paw kept growing bigger and bigger in midair, and finally turned into a huge claw that blotted out the sky. The law of time swirled around the paw. Boom! The black-robed man focused his eyes. With a flick of his finger, a black thunderbolt shot toward Lord Go's paw. Suddenly, they collided, and a violent explosion took place. Bu Fong's figure flickered, and he pulled Hades' era to the side. Soul Demon Army, attack! A cold voice rang out in midair. The next moment, the countless soul demons behind him rushed into the battlefield. However, it was different from before. This time, the soul demons had learned their lesson. They divided into 3 fronts, one of which went straight for Bu Fong, and the other 2 turned into torrents and joined the army of the cavalry of death and the exiles. All of a sudden, the pressure on Master Jinyang, Viscount Ash, and the others increased dramatically. Some of them even began to show signs of being routed. After all, they were not very strong. Marquis Langu, the great demon, roared and slapped one soul demon after another. His ferocity was on full display. Bu Fong's heart skipped a beat. One spicy strip after another emerged in front of him. The death spicy strip shot out. Suddenly, Hades' era's eyes lit up. Spicy strips. They're mine. They're all mine. Hades' era roared. Then, he soared into the sky, heading straight for the spicy strips. Lord Go and the black-robed man began to fight fiercely. The black-robed man was a great soul overlord. Lord Go did not have a good impression of a great soul overlord at all. Or rather, Lord Go did not have a good impression of soul demons. If it had not been for the soul demon's palm, the chaos space would have been destroyed. Even now, heaven gods like them would not have fallen into transmigration. Even now, heaven god space and heaven god destruction had not returned. Heaven god time. The black-robed man never thought that he would run into 2 heaven gods in Void City. A heaven god who was not weaker than a great soul overlord was really shocking to him. He had always thought that the chaotic universe had declined. Now, it seemed that he was wrong. The entire soul demon universe was wrong. Were these 2 heaven gods the helpers of the chaotic universe's cursed goddesses? The black-robed man soared into the sky and fought Lord Go. The power of sin and the power of the laws kept colliding, causing explosions and rumbling sounds. Hades' era was addicted to spicy strips and could not help himself. Meanwhile, Bu Fong was facing an army of soul demons. The others, on the other hand, were at a disadvantage. The situation was reversed in an instant. In midair, Bu Fong's vermilion robe fluttered in the wind. Then he flew out at high speed. He unleashed the 5 supreme laws of the universe, and dark cuisine hovered around him. Dark cuisine was the simplest and most effective way to deal with soul demons. Bu Fong shuttled through the army of soul demons. Wherever he passed, every soul demon he passed would spontaneously combust. These soul demons simply could not resist the delicious dark cuisine. Bam! 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 Bufong streaked across the sky like a shooting star, and the army of soul demons behind him exploded. It was a shocking scene. The nobles of Void City sucked in their breaths. In the sky, Cursed Goddess Soul's face was livid. However, it would take Bufong some time to get rid of so many soul demons, and there were many things she could do during this time. She turned her eyes and rested them on you in the restaurant. Isn't that chef going to help you? If Nethery were to die, this chef would definitely lose his composure. At that time, no one could stop her. Come with me, Soul said. She looked at Pai Dong and Pai Shi, who were standing next to her. The brothers narrowed their eyes. Clad in their death armors, they nodded. Soul raised her hand. Her slender fingers were fair, and her nails were crystal clear. She pointed at the restaurant. Let's kill those two cursed goddesses, Soul said. Her words revealed enough confidence. Pai Dong and Pai Shi's eyes lit up. That's right. At this moment, the enemy's defenders have all attacked, leaving only the two cursed goddesses. You're only as strong as a mid-stage saint of the Great Path. As for Hutu, she's injured, but she's nothing to be afraid of. This is my best chance. Cursed Goddess Soul grinned. Then, the three of them sped forward. She was holding a black orb in her hand, which was swirling with the power of sin. The three of them turned into 3 black shooting stars and sped toward the restaurant. Their targets were you and Hutu. Bufong slapped 2 copies of the Stargazy pie on the faces of the 2 soul overlords. He glanced at Soul and Pai Dong and Pai Shi, who were rushing toward the restaurant, and the corners of his mouth twitched slightly. Marquis Langu roared. The expressions of Viscount Ash and Master Zhen Yong changed dramatically. If the 2 cursed goddesses were injured, everything they had done would be in vain. Countess Xiaqiu, Countess Adong, and Countess Luming were held back by Marchioness Ruoshui and the other experts. For a moment, they couldn't do anything. Countess Xiaqiu's eyes were filled with worry. What should we do? Nether King Erha's eyes focused, and he stopped pulling the spicy strip. Then, he kicked the ground with the tip of his foot and shot forward, heading straight for the restaurant. Although the chili gluten was delicious, he still understood the importance of the matter. Rumble. Pai Dong and Pai Shi landed, drew their black bows, and shot toward Hutu. Hutu focused her eyes and pointed the bow of bliss at the black bow. On the other side, Cursed Goddess Soul had landed. After stepping into the chaotic saint level, her fighting prowess was extraordinary. Countless sinful forces spread out of the black ball and tried to entangle you. Die! Cursed Goddess Soul and Pai Dong and Pai Shi shouted at the same time. Slash! Suddenly, Pai Dong and Pai Shi shot their arrows. Nether King Ha's figure appeared. Puff! The arrow pierced Era's body and pushed Era 2 steps back. Beauty, I'm here. Don't be afraid. Era turned to look at Hutu with a spicy strip in his mouth and said in a deep voice, Slash! Hutu could not hold back, and the bow of bliss flew out of her hand. Rumble! Xiao Ai stood in front of you, her eyes full of determination. Little Hu, who was playing dead in Yu's arms, jumped up as well. Your Excellency Nethery, run. Xiao Ai's eyes were filled with determination. Run? If you can't, you'll all stay here, Soul said indifferently. Cursed Goddess Soul said indifferently. Her eyes narrowed. She looked into the depths of the restaurant. There, a mechanical voice rang out. Troublemakers will be stripped as an example to others. Troublemakers will be stripped in public. Rumble. A purple beam shot out. Cursed Goddess Soul held her breath. Then, a huge palm appeared as if it had teleported, grabbed her head, and pressed her to the ground. Then, a palm-leaf fan-like palm appeared as if it had teleported, grabbed her head, and ruthlessly pressed her to the ground. Chapter 1764. Rumble. It never occurred to Soul that there would be a powerhouse in the restaurant. When that fan-like palm appeared, she subconsciously wanted to dodge it. Even the black ball in her hand had unleashed its energy to defend against it. However, she could not defend against it. This fan-like palm had easily and casually broken through her energy defense, directly smashing in her face and fiercely pressing her entire body to the ground. That rude behavior was like that of a violent beast. Cursed Goddess Soul could even feel that her tall nose was being flattened. The restaurant's floor was extremely hard, and Soul felt her head shake. She was a chaotic saint, and her fleshly body was so strong that even the explosion of a planet could not hurt her. However, at this moment, it was not as hard as the restaurant's floor. Xiao Bai. No. Lore Bai. Xiao AI had almost despaired. She thought she was going to die, mainly because Soul's aura was too terrifying, even more so than that of Soul Demon. However, now, all the danger was gone. Xiao Bai's appearance made Xiao AI so excited that her heart almost jumped out her throat. She swore that from today on, she would be Lord Bai's little fan. The corner of Yu's mouth twitched slightly. In Bufang's restaurant, she was basically safe. She could not believe that Soul wanted to deal with her in the restaurant. She was really a little stupid. In her arms, little Hu, who had been vigilant, relaxed a little. His fur drooped as he burped. However, he rolled his eyes. There was a flash of golden light. Little Hu jumped up and landed on Xiaopi's shoulder. With a ripping sound, he shot out of the restaurant. The bubbles in Xiaopi's mouth burst, and then his body grew bigger and bigger. Finally, he grew to the size of a black dragon. On Xiaopi's back, Little Hu's body had almost turned into a dot. At the same time, Little Hu's body turned blood red, and his 9 tails swayed and lashed at the void. Energy gathered in her mouth, and she opened it wide and let out a shrill cry. Screech! Golden light shone in all directions. Little Hu locked his gaze on the army in the distance. He opened his mouth. Da-da-da-da-da. As the blue light shot out, a golden stream of light rapidly shot out. They turned into arcs and charged towards the huge army in the distance. One of the soul demons opened his mouth wide and approached Viscount Ash. However, before he could make a move, a golden soul demon meatball approached and exploded. The soul demon's upper body was blown to pieces. As the wind blew, Viscount Ash's clothes fluttered in the wind. Viscount Ash was dumbfounded. She turned her head and looked at the gigantic mantis shrimp and Little Hu. Was he really that strong? Are all the people in that restaurant freaks? A chef had suppressed an army of soul demons. The puppet subdued Cursed Goddess Soul with one move. Now even pets were so freaking powerful. Who said that Lord Nethery's power was weak? This kind of force was unbelievably powerful. Countess Xia Qiu laughed. She stepped on her black dragon, which spewed flames from its mouth and incinerated all the exiles. The situation seemed to have reversed in an instant. Little Hu kept shooting soul demon meatballs out of his mouth. Soul's army was actually suppressed by the powerful firepower. In front of the restaurant, for a moment, the atmosphere was a little awkward. Hades' Era looked at Hutu with a spicy strip dangling from his mouth. This king used his body to block an arrow for you. Why did you shoot this king's, but with an arrow? Hades' Era looked at Hutu and said helplessly. Hutu looked a little embarrassed. She did not expect Hades' Era to block the arrow with his body. However, it was her fault that she still shot the arrow when she saw Era. But she could not be blamed. This guy was too coquettish. He had scared her. Hutu thought to herself, I won't take the blame for this. Slash. Hades' Era pulled the arrow out of his butt. Then, he turned his eyes to Pai Dong and Pai Shi in the distance. He raised a hand, pointed at the black arrow in his chest, and said, You two are very naughty, aren't you? You shot my heart with an arrow. Do you have a crush on me? Pai Dong and Pai Shi looked at each other, their brows furrowed. Ignore this guy. Let's finish this quickly. Pai Dong said. Then, they shot forward in an instant. Boom! Their bodies jerked forward. Pai Dong drew his bow, and Pai Shi shot the arrow. Hades' Era raised his eyebrows slightly. Slash! The black arrow shot out again. It tore through the air and sped toward Hades' Era. The arrowhead seemed to be enlarging, and its shaft was trembling, producing a faint sonic boom. The arrow was about to bypass Hades' Era and go straight to Hutu. Huta drew her bow and frowned. Suddenly, she froze again. Slash! The sound of an arrow piercing flesh rang out. Huta looked at Hades' Era, who stood in front of her, not knowing what to say. The arrow pierced Hades' Era's chest again. Beauty, I don't mind if you shoot my butt, but you can't do it again. Hades' Era said solemnly. Huta was speechless. Is this guy stupid? Pai Dong and Pai Shi were also stunned. It was the first time they saw such a shameless man. How could he pick up girls in such a situation? Shoot. Shoot him to death. Pai Dong said, gritting his teeth. Buzz. Buzz. Pai Dong and Pai Shi shot 3 arrows in a row. Each arrow had the terrifying power to pierce through a star. Wasn't that slut good at blocking arrows? She was good at blocking arrows with her body. Then keep blocking. They wanted to see how many arrows this guy could block. Slash. 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 Nether King Erha stood at his spot, his body trembling uncontrollably. At the same time, he unhurriedly pulled out the spicy strip. Occasionally, he would twist his waist to block the arrows that the other side shot. Pai Dong and Pai Shi were panting. Hades' Era's body was already full of arrows. What the F *CK? Pai Dong was furious. Why couldn't this guy die? The corner of Hutu's mouth twitched. He was really despicable. My 2 brothers, you shot a total of 326 arrows. You shot 100 arrows into my little heart. Tell me, do you like me? Hades' Era said in a deep voice with a spicy strip dangling from his mouth. Big brother, I can't stand it anymore. Pai Shi roared, his face livid. He took a step forward. The curse power exploded, turning into a beam of light that shot toward Hades' Era. They were no match for him in terms of being despicable. Slash. Hades' Era's eyes narrowed. The law of life revolved around him, and the arrows that had pierced his body were knocked away. Pai Dong and Pai Shi no longer used arrows. They fought with their bare hands. However, this was perhaps the worst decision they had ever made. Hades' Era was the heavenly life god. He was equivalent to a Duke-level expert. The 2 of them were no match for him. Boom! With a spicy strip dangling from his mouth, Hades' Era kicked Pai Dong away. As for Pai Shi, he was pressed against the wall of the restaurant. Are you still naughty? Nether King Erha held a spicy strip in his mouth as he said gloomily. Buzz puff! A shockwave erupted. Hades' Era's pupils constricted. His hair fluttered in the wind. In the next instant, he found that Pai Shi, who was pressed against the wall, had his head pierced by an arrow. Even before his death, Pai Shi's eyes were filled with reluctance. Pai Shi's soul floated out. Huta knocked an arrow, and the bow of bliss whistled through the air. The arrow pierced the soul and exploded it. A chaotic saint had fallen. Nether King Erha held the spicy strip between his lips, dumbstruck. How could this woman be so tough? Huta's face was indifferent as she waved the bow of bliss at Hades' Era. In the distance, Pai Dong crawled to his feet, and his eyes instantly turned red. When the 2 brothers worked together, they could fight a marquis, but when separated, they were only at the level of an ordinary chaotic saint. Anger exploded in Pai Dong's eyes. However, with a boom, he was hit by a figure. Soul scrambled to her feet, her hair disheveled. Her hair was disheveled, and blood trickled from the corner of her mouth. Your Excellency, Soul. Pai Dong's eyes were full of anger. Plan failed. Retreat. Cursed goddess, Soul shouted. Xiao Bai's purple eyes flashed as she walked out step by step. Every step she took caused her heart to tremble in fear. The curse power erupted, and she wanted to rush out of the restaurant. But a palm fan like Palm suddenly appeared and grabbed her calf. Her body was once again swung around. She hit the wall of the restaurant with a thud, letting out a muffled grunt. In Xiao Bai's magic forbidding domain, she could not resist at all. Damn it! Curse Goddess Soul's anger surged. The little girl sat in a chair, swinging her fair legs as she watched Whitey crush Cursed Goddess Soul with a gleam in her eyes. Xiao AI clapped her hands excitedly. Nethery calmly looked at them. Let go of Her Excellency's soul. Pai Dong suppressed the grief in his heart and rushed to his feet. However, He was slapped away by Xiao Bai and smashed into the wall. In midair, Soul, who was being smashed by Whitey, had a ferocious look in her eyes. Suddenly, her heart sank. She found that in the distance, Hutu was knocking the bow of bliss and aiming at her. A chill rose in her heart. With a long cry, Soul slipped out of Xiao Bai's hand, fell to the ground, and bounced to her feet. A whistling sound rang out. An arrow shot out of the bow of bliss, chasing after Soul. Cursed Goddess Soul leaped out of the restaurant. Pai Dong followed. However, the bow of bliss kept chasing after Soul. Damn it. The primitive divine artifact of the primitive universe is really tricky. Cursed Goddess Soul turned her eyes. Then a black ball emerged in her hand. She could not use it when facing Xiao Bai, but now that she was out of Xiao Bai's domain, she could use it. Inside the sphere, black energy came out and wrapped around the arrow. The arrow was instantly corroded into nothingness. Pai Dong and Cursed Goddess Soul managed to escape in a panic. When they landed in midair, their faces were livid. They had wanted to launch a sneak attack, but it had failed, and Pai Shi had died. She glanced over her shoulder and saw that the situation had reached a stalemate. With Little Hu's firepower support, the army could not break through the defense line for a while. Damn it, Cursed Goddess Soul's eyes were filled with coldness. Rumble. The last soul demon was enveloped by a scarlet flame. Bufong shook his hands, patted his clothes, and breathed a soft sigh of relief. Bufong turned to look at Soul in the distance. I've told you, I'm as strong as an army. Do you believe me now? Soul's eyes were extremely cold. Her hair was disheveled, and she looked a little flustered. Bufong's words made her face very unsightly. Suddenly, Cursed Goddess Soul smiled. Do you think you have a chance to turn the tables? In the distance, the black-robed man, who was fighting the Lord Go, knocked the Lord Go away with one move. He grabbed the hourglass and appeared behind Cursed Goddess Soul in a flash. Envy Great Soul Overlord. Do it, Soul said, glancing at the black-robed man. The black-robed man nodded. The Lord Go landed beside Bufong. The situation reached a stalemate. Everyone turned to look at Cursed Goddess Soul in the distance with a grave expression. The black-robed man's scarlet eyes narrowed. The next moment, he raised the hourglass in his hand. The golden sand in the hourglass finally stopped flowing. When the last grain of sand fell, the hourglass of time and space suddenly burst into a dazzling light. The space-time barrier of Void City was torn apart. Rumble. A terrible power of sin swept out through the hourglass. Amidst the dazzling light, a terrifying fissure was torn open. Terrible power of sin filled the air behind it. A huge palm pressed against the edge of the rift, and with a ripping sound, the rift was ripped open. Suddenly, two great soul overlords rushed out of it. Behind the two great soul overlords was an army of soul demons from the soul demon universe. They were well equipped, and their auras fluctuated. The explosion of the hourglass had attracted an army of soul demons from the soul demon universe. A real army of soul demons. Chapter 1765. The hourglass of time and space distorted time and opened a vast passage that connected to the soul demon universe. Meanwhile, in the soul demon universe, an army of 100,000 soul demons was already gathering their strength, ready to go. The people present sucked in their breaths. This time, no matter who it was, they all felt terrified. The nobles of Void City were even more horrified. Even though they had supported Cursed Goddess Soul, this support was nothing short of a disaster for them. How could she draw an army of 100,000 soul demons into Void City? Was Her Excellency Soul crazy? What was going on? It would have been fine if it were just the soul demons who had been banished to Void City, but now she had even attracted the army of the soul demon universe. She was going to doom Void City eternally. Her Excellency Soul, you can't do this. You will be punished by the Queen if you do this. Her Excellency Soul, please think twice. The nobles' eyes widened. They supported Cursed Goddess Soul, but they did not want Void City to be destroyed. In midair, Cursed Goddess Soul, who was in an extremely sorry state, glanced coldly at the crowd without any emotion in her eyes. Stop all this? Impossible. She had paid a great price for all this, and there was no turning back. Rumble. A monstrous power of sin was unleashed from the space-time passage. In midair, the black-robed man burst out laughing and unleashed the aura of a great soul overlord to the extreme. He had been holding in for a long time, and now he could finally release it. Two more great soul overlords appeared in the space-time passage. The power of sin from the three great soul overlords almost enveloped the whole Void City. Countless people were trembling. Xiao AI was dumbfounded, and despair filled her eyes. What was happening? Was this the end of Void City? Viscount Ash and Master Jinyong were in despair, and their men had long given up resisting. How could they fight? They did not have the advantage in numbers, and now they had to fight against an army of 100,000 soul demons. They were not on the same level at all. Bu Fong landed in front of the restaurant. His expression was extremely solemn. The Lord Go, Hades Era, Marquis Lang Gu, who had returned to his human form, Countess Xiaqiu, and the others, everyone had gathered in front of the restaurant, their faces solemn and dignified. Bu Fong couldn't help but gasp. An army of 100,000 soul demons. Moreover, it was the army of the soul demon universe. This lineup was even more terrifying than when the chaotic universe was invaded by the soul demons. At the very least, the Chaos Verse would be able to organize an army to fight back. But now, the army of Void City was under Soul's control. Bu Fong also felt troubled. Even the teleportation circle provided by the system couldn't do it, but the hourglass could. It was indeed a little terrifying. Lord Go and Hades Era didn't look too good either. This situation doesn't look good. Hades Era smacked his lips. On our side, everyone who can fight is here, right? Hades Era said with a spicy strip in his mouth. Hutu, who was standing beside him, nodded her head. Her expression was also rather solemn. The number of people on both sides was completely disproportionate. The people in front of the restaurant could not resist them at all. Viscount Ash and Master Jinyang's subordinates had almost all fallen in the previous confrontation. Some were wounded, and some had fallen. It was impossible to organize an effective defense line. What should they do? This was the gloom that hung over everyone's mind. Bu Fong had a headache as well. Dark Cuisine could restrain these soul demons. However, they were facing an army of 100,000. They could drown him. Where's the Queen of Curses? Bu Fong could not help but turn a look at Marquis Lang Gu and the others. Void City is about to be destroyed, but she's still hiding. Marquis Lang Gu and the others hurriedly shook their heads. Their heads were shaking like rattledrums. Obviously, they also did not know why the Queen of Curses had not appeared. Rumble. The army was getting closer and closer. Finally, one figure after another poured out of the space-time portal. The originally spacious sky suddenly became dark. Behind Cursed Goddessol was an army. The pressure was simply terrifying. Haha, gluttony. It looks like you really can't hold on any longer. It's better for us to do it. I've long found this puny Void City an eyesore. Two boorish voices resounded. Two great soul overlords were not wrapped in black robes. A great soul overlord was slender, with green skin and two tentacles on his head that looked like snails, which were wiggling slightly. There was no doubt that they were two great soul overlords. They were Envy Great Soul Overlord and Greed Great Soul Overlord. Gluttony Great Soul Overlord was also a black-robed Great Soul Overlord. Of the 7 sins in the Soul Demon universe, 3 had gathered at this moment. Each of them was not weaker than a Duke-level expert. Together with the army of 100,000 soul demons, Void City was as fragile as a piece of tofu. Now that everyone is here, do your best. I've been waiting for the hourglass to turn for a long time. Don't let me down. Gluttony Great Soul Overlord said faintly. Unlike Envy Great Soul Overlord, who was as thin as a bamboo pole, Greed Great Soul Overlord looked like a huge poisonous scorpion. His hair was hanging upside down like a scorpion's tail, and he looked extremely ferocious. He. Oh, isn't this Soul? Hasn't she sat on the throne of Void City yet? Envy, great soul, Overlord said. Greed, great soul, Overlord sneered. I told you long ago that this girl is useless. We might as well attack. Soul glanced at the two great soul overlords, her face livid. The great soul overlords did not seem to take her seriously at all. Buzzed, a black energy ball emerged in Soul's palm. As soon as it appeared, the few great soul overlords who were acting presumptuously did not dare to continue. The energy ball was surrounded by the power of the seven sins, and it seemed to be a symbol of status. I didn't summon you here to chat. Now, flatten this restaurant for me, Soul said coldly. She raised her hand and pointed a finger at the restaurant. Many soul demons fixed their eyes on the restaurant. A restaurant? There's actually a restaurant in Void City? Is this a joke? But it makes sense. If the Queen of Curses could still cause trouble, she wouldn't have let you curse goddesses compete for the throne, and there would be nothing for us soul demons to do. Envy, great soul overlord laughed evilly. Rumble. In the next moment, his body suddenly shot out and turned into a black light. He hovered above the restaurant, blocking out the sun and the sky. Flattening restaurants and whatnot. I love it the most. Envy, great soul overlord burst out laughing. The next moment, a mighty force exploded out of his bamboo-like body. All of a sudden, he took a step forward, stomping on the restaurant. He was going to turn the restaurant into rubble. With this step, a vast amount of power of sin spread in all directions. Bam! 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 Outside the restaurant, the bodies of some of Viscount Ash's subordinates exploded. Even a saint of the Great Path could not withstand the power of this kick. Lord Dog's eyes narrowed, and his exquisite dog paw casually swiped at the void. Rumble. The dog's paw collided with the descending foot. The law of time collided with the power of sin. The clash between the law of time and the power of envy and sin rose and fell. Oh, the law of time, a heaven god of the chaotic universe? How did a heaven god turn into a dog? Envy, great soul overlord, was shocked that his attack was fended off. Bufong furrowed his brows. He ordered the people who were scattered outside the restaurant to hide inside. At the same time, the floating souls were summoned into the restaurant by Bufong. According to the two great soul overlords, did something happen to the Queen of Curses of Void City? Otherwise, why hadn't she appeared yet? This was simply treason. According to the Queen of Curses' nature, she should have slaughtered all the soul demons. However, the army of Void City was under Soul's control. These people were originally exiles from the various universes. It was basically impossible for them to have the heart to defend Void City and switch sides to Bufong's side. Therefore, Bufong's side was at a complete disadvantage in this battle. It was just like the beginning. Soul had the perfect advantage. It was impossible for her to lose. Hutu and Nethery, the two curse goddesses, were no match for him at all. In the Queen of Curses' palace, the domain that enveloped the whole palace suddenly shattered. Boom! A loud rumble rang out. Duchess Tianlian staggered back several steps and coughed up blood. The look in her eyes was pitiful. The moment the domain broke, a monstrous power of sin rushed into the senses of the three dukes. Duchess Nightmare and Duchess Yunwan's expressions changed dramatically. This aura, so much power of sin. Tianlian, look at what you've done. Duchess Nightmare was a straightforward person, so she snapped. She was too lazy to say anything. She stomped her foot on the ground, soared into the sky, turned into a plume of black mist, and sped away. Duchess Yunwan looked at Duchess Tianlian in disappointment and shook her head. Her plump figure turned into a streak of light and flew away. In front of the Queen of Curses' palace, Duchess Tianlian stumbled and sat on the ground. Her face was full of grief. She let out a long sigh and stood up. She turned around and glanced at the Queen of Curses' palace, which was closed tightly behind her. Then, she glanced at the dark sky in the distance. There was a look of determination in her eyes. Envy, great soul overlord, and Lord Go began to fight in the void. A great soul overlord against a modern-day heaven god. This was a clash between the top fighting forces of two universes. The soul demon universe was extremely powerful, and it was facing the desolate, chaotic universe. The battle was earth-shattering. The more they fought, the more excited they became. They rushed into the clouds, the starry sky, and the world was destroyed. Countless stars were reduced to rubble in the battle between the two. Fortunately, all the stars in the universe where Void City was located were dead. Envy, Great Soul Overlord, struck. Greed, Great Soul Overlord, naturally joined the fight as well. Rumble. His body rushed out, shrouded in the terrible power of sin. A huge scorpion's barbed tail fell from the sky and smashed toward the restaurant. If the tail hit its target, half of Void City would crumble. Beauty, I'll be right back. Wait for me. Hades' Era turned to look at Hutu. She rolled her eyes at him, but he did not mind. With the spicy strip dangling from his mouth and the law of life swirling around him, he rushed out of the restaurant and headed straight for the barbed tail. Come on, grandson of a great soul overlord. Your Grandpa Era is here. Bam! Hades' Era roared with the spicy strip dangling from his mouth. The scorpion's barbed tail hit him in an instant, and he fell hard to the ground. Everyone was speechless. Greed, Great Soul Overlord narrowed his eyes. Was someone trying to stop him just now? Oh! Suddenly, Greed, Great Soul Overlord's pupils constricted. The scorpion's barbed tail was suddenly lifted up by someone. Hades' Era stood on both legs. With the spicy strip dangling from his mouth and the huge barbed tail in his hand, his arms erupted with infinite strength. Bam! The scorpion's barb was directly crushed by him. With the spicy strip dangling from his mouth, Era sped toward Greed, Great Soul Overlord. The two of them wrestled in midair. Why could Hades' Era's law of life, which was so pure and holy, army attack, flatten the restaurant? Seeing that the two Great Soul Overlords were entangled, Curse Goddess Soul's eyes turned cold, and she suddenly raised the black ball in her hand. It was as if she had given a military order. The army of soul demons moved in an instant. Rumble. In an instant, countless soldiers shot toward the restaurant. Every soul demon was unleashing infinite power. It was as if they could flatten the restaurant in a flash. Stop! In the distance, two loud shouts rang out. Duchess Nightmare and Duchess Yunlan had finally appeared. Chapter 1766. The Dukes had appeared. In Void City, Dukes were the strongest fighting force after the Queen of Curses. Their appearance was like a pillar of support, allowing many people hiding in the restaurant to heave a sigh of relief. Yu and Hutu breathed sighs of relief as well. When they saw Duchess Nightmare and Duchess Yunlan, they were much more relieved. With the addition of two Dukes, the high-end fighting force on their side was a little stronger than that of the other side. In this way, they could still fight. The attack of the soul demons could not be stopped by a single roar from the Dukes. The Dukes' words might be useful to the nobles of Void City, but to the soul demons, they were like wind passing by their ears. Boom! Bufong let the crowd into the restaurant. Then, the attacks of the soul demons fell and smashed into the restaurant. In an instant, it smashed into the restaurant. The entire restaurant seemed like it was about to be crushed into ruins in an instant. However, soon, everyone was dumbfounded. No matter how the soul demons attacked, they could not shake the restaurant at all. The restaurant was as stable as a boulder. The nobles of Void City looked as if they had seen a ghost. Inside the restaurant, the crowd, who was on the verge of despair, widened their eyes in surprise. "He's fine," Xiao Ai said with a lingering fear, patting her flat chest. Outside the restaurant, the soul demons were roaring. Some of them had their mouths wide open, filled with disgusting mucus. Bufong, on the other hand, was very calm. This was all within his expectations. The restaurant's defense was invincible, and no one could destroy anything in it. However, Bufong was not a man who would let himself be taken advantage of. He opened the restaurant door. A soul demon roared and pounced at him. With his hands clasped behind his back, Bufong took a step forward. Xiaobai followed behind Bufong. As the soul demon roared, Xiaobai threw out his huge palm and slapped the soul demon's head. With a boom, the soul demon's head was crushed. The soul demon's soul howled as it was devoured by Xiao Bai. Purple-eyed Xiao Bai was extremely powerful. Bam! The door of the restaurant closed again. Inside the restaurant, everyone could only lean against the window and watch the battle outside, in the sky. Duchess Nightmare and Duchess Yunlan breathed a sigh of relief. Then, their gazes became much sharper. A long sword appeared in Duchess Nightmare's hand. She swung it horizontally, and the void seemed to be cut in half. The sword light swept out and cut thousands of soul demons in half. Duchess Yunlan also attacked with a cold face. She raised her hand, and ice needles emerged. With a flick of her finger, the needles whistled in every direction. The ice needles were wrapped in curse power, and when they pierced through a soul demon, they corroded the soul demon into mud. Bu Fong and Xiao Bai also charged forward. Holding the spear, Xiao Bai looked like a peerless god of slaughter. Every time he swung it, he took the life of a soul demon. At the same time, countless soul demons were vanishing from the light beams shot out of his palms. Holding the black turtle constellation wok, Bu Fong killed one soul demon with each wok. The wok was coated with the divine flame, which had a powerful burning power and could burn the soul demons to ashes. The two of them opened a bloody path in front of the restaurant. The army of 100,000 soul demons was forced back by Bu Fong and his companions. Gluttony Great Soul Overlord narrowed his eyes. He took a step forward and headed straight for the two dukes. All he needed to do was to hold them back. When Envy Great Soul Overlord and Greed Great Soul Overlord were free, the two dukes would be finished. In the distance, Lord Go and Envy Great Soul Overlord were fighting fiercely. However, the Great Soul Overlord was so strong that he was showing signs of suppressing Lord Go. On the other side, Hades Era was in the same situation. He was almost completely suppressed by Greed Great Soul Overlord. This was not good news for Void City. Bu Fong hovered in midair. He was facing an army of 100,000. Although the number of soul demons had increased, Bu Fong was not out of ideas. Bu Fong took a deep breath. Bu Fong asked Xiao Bai to hold them back for a while. Buzz, his spirit sea, was pushed to its limit. It was as if the whole Void City was under Bu Fong's control. The black turtle constellation wok floated in midair. The next moment, it began to tremble. Bu Fong's mental force struck the wok like a hammer, causing it to split into two, then into three, and then into 10,000. Countless black wok floated around Bu Fong. Since there are so many soul demons, I'll use more dark dishes to deal with them. It's not impossible to cook 10,000 dark dishes at the same time. Of course, this was a challenge for Bu Fong. After all, every dish required meticulous planning, and a lot of mental energy was needed to prepare it. Cooking 10,000 dark dishes at the same time was very stressful for Bu Fong. Cursed Goddess Soul saw so many black wok in midair, but she did not know what Bu Fong was trying to do. Go, kill this chef. Cursed Goddess Soul said coldly, as soon as her voice rang out. A soul overlord who had just stepped into the realm of chaotic saints, as well as several ordinary soul overlords, charged toward Bu Fong. 4 soul demons. Any universe could produce soul overlords. Therefore, they had a very large number of soul overlords. After all, they had invaded countless universes. Rumble. Xiao Bai's energy beam shot out and tore a soul overlord apart. Then he fought the soul demons in midair. One punch after another, all of them hit their target. All the ordinary soul overlords were crushed, while the chaotic saint-level soul overlord kept fighting with Xiao Bai. The battle was stimulating the void. Bu Fong's movements were very exaggerated, which attracted the attention of many soul demons. Many people in the restaurant were amazed. Is owner Bu planning to cook 10,000 wok at the same time? Xiao AI cried out in surprise. Many people widened their eyes. Cooking 10,000 dishes at the same time. This scene is too spectacular. Bu Fong closed his eyes. His mental force swept out like a storm. One ingredient after another hovered in midair. It formed a standoff with the army of soul demons in the distance. With a thought in his mind, Bu Fong's mental force almost stirred heaven and earth. Every ingredient was cut and chopped, and he began to cook them in an orderly manner. The pressure was tremendous. Even a heaven god would feel great pressure when he was controlling 10,000 ingredients of high grade at the same time. However, halfway through the cooking, Bufong began to pant. In the distance, Curse Goddess Soul's pupils constricted. She seemed to remember the method Bufong used to suppress the army of soul demons. Those bowls of strange dark cuisine seemed to be able to suppress the army of soul demons. Quick, kill that chef. Don't dawdle. Cursed Goddess Soul roared furiously. She could not let Bufong finish cooking the dishes. The soul demons rushed out like a torrent, heading straight for Bufong. Bufong's expression did not change. He was still cooking. Each black turtle constellation wok was steaming hot. In the restaurant, stimulated by this shocking scene, the powerhouses rushed out one after another. They rushed into the clouds and stood in front of Bufong, facing these soul demons head-on. Rumble. However, the moment they collided, they felt as if they were being crushed by a mountain. They could hardly breathe. Lord Go and Hades' arrow were also suppressed and could not move. The situation of this battle was really unfavorable for them. Perhaps Bufong's dishes could turn the tide of the battle. Xiao Bai hovered in front of Bufong with a spear in his hand. He alone blocked hundreds and thousands of soul demons and became Bufong's sturdy shield. Rumble. Hot steam billowed up. Bufong's eyes were bloodshot. At this moment, Bufong realized that his mental force was not enough. However, this was about it. Bam, bam, bam. Every black turtle constellation wok emitted a soft sound. Then, hot steam surged, and one stargazy pie after another jumped out of the wok. The stargazy pie was like a herring in the starry sky, its eyes wide and filled with fighting spirit. Bufong's face was pale. Cooking 10,000 dishes at the same time was a huge drain on him. After all, these dishes were not made with ordinary ingredients. Each of them was filled with divine power and spiritual energy, and the slightest carelessness could lead to an explosion. Once one exploded, it would become a series of explosions. But fortunately, everything was fine now. Bufong pushed his arms forward. One after another, the stargazy pie flew out, whistling through the air toward the many soul demons. The eyes of the experts who were fighting the soul demons and were covered in wounds lit up. As soon as the stargazy pie entered the battlefield, it immediately gained an absolute advantage. Although they were soul demons from the soul demon universe, they were still soul demons. They were all attracted at once. One by one, they flew toward the stargazy pie. The experts of Void City felt that the pressure on them had been greatly reduced, and it could even be said that they did not feel any pressure at all. Marquis Langu was surrounded by the sinful power of the soul demons. At this moment, he could not help but widen his eyes. Rumble. The crimson divine flame spread across the sky in an instant. The bodies of the soul demons began to burn, and soon they were burned into nothingness. Xiao Bai's purple eyes flashed. Without holding back, he attacked again and again. The soul demons who had spontaneously combusted were crushed into ashes by him. Countless broken souls were sucked into his mouth. Bufong breathed a sigh of relief. For a moment, the 10,000 stargazy pie was under great pressure. But it was not over yet. Bufong mustered his mental force again, and a mental force storm swept out. The 18 hell curry came out of the wok. Every bowl of 18 hell curry was smeared on the faces of those soul demons. It made the soul demons shiver. The death spicy strip came out of the wok. Like arrows, they whistled through the air and pierced one soul demon after another, causing them to explode. Bufong was panting for breath. This was the first time he felt so tired. After working for a while, his spirit was almost depleted. He took out an oyster pancake and stuffed it into his mouth. Only then did Bufong feel a little better. Rumble. In the distance, Envy Great Soul Overlord's paw fell. He slammed Lord Go to the ground, and with a boom, a huge palm print appeared on the ground of Void City. Countless cracks spread rapidly. Hades' Era's face was very unsightly as he was pierced by scorpion barbs. Even with the law of life, he felt a wave of weakness. Boom! The ground exploded, and Lord Go soared into the sky with cat-like steps. His eyes were sharp. Envy Great Soul Overlord waved his palm, and a metal stick shrouded in the black power of sin appeared in his hand. Just in time, I'll beat this dog with this stick. Envy Great Soul Overlord grinned and burst out laughing. In the distance, a pair of black scissors appeared in Great Soul Overlord's hand. A cracking sound rang out as if it was about to cut heaven and earth into pieces. These were weapons given to them by the Soul God, and each of them was extremely powerful. It was because of these weapons that they were able to suppress Lord Go and Hades' era. In midair, exhausted, Bufang sat down. His vermilion robe rustled. Bufang turned to look at Lord Go and Hades' era, who had fallen into a passive position. He frowned. Neither Lord Go nor Hades' era had a suitable weapon. How could they defeat a great soul overlord? He took a few deep breaths. Bufang's eyes lit up. Then he mustered his mental force again. The Chilean transmigration ladle, the white tiger stove, and the dragon bone knife appeared at the same time. Bufang began to cook in midair. A dazzling golden light rose. Before long, it was hot. Bufang had finished 2 dishes. Exhausted, Bufang sat down, raised his hand, and flicked his finger at the bowl. Buzz, the sweet and sour ribs and spicy strips immediately flew toward Lord Go and Hades' era. Lord Go, era, your weapons are here. Chapter 1767. Lord Go, era, your weapons are here. Bufang's mental force was extremely weak, so he used all his strength to flick the sweet and sour ribs and the golden spicy strip out. A bowl of sweet and sour ribs exuded a strong aroma. A spicy strip glowed with a golden light. Weapons? Where are the weapons? Bufang's voice was very loud, and many people were stunned. Envy Great Soul Overlord. The powerful Great Soul Overlord's eyes widened as he watched the bowl of sweet and sour ribs, which to him was emitting an endless stench, fly past him. Don't King tell me that. This plate of meat is a weapon. He roared inwardly. Lord Go's eyes lit up, and he stuck out his tongue. Striding with his enchanting cat-like steps, he walked in midair. The sweet and sour ribs fell and hovered in front of Lord Go. The aroma emanating from the sweet and sour ribs made Lord Go narrow his eyes. Just by smelling it, he felt energized. As for Hades' era, he had already dashed out like a madman. Even though his body was covered with the scorpion's barbs, which were filled with the power of sin, as he pinched the spicy strip, Hades' era's eyes lit up. At that moment, he felt as if he had been reborn. Was this the weapon Fang young man had prepared for him? Ha ha! I am a man with a weapon now. Hades' era was very excited. The law of life in his body, which had been weak, suddenly soared and forcibly broke the restraint. The 2 great soul overlords turned pale with fright. A bowl of meat and a spicy strip could actually make these 2 fellows full of strength again. Bufang watched Lord Go take the sweet and sour ribs, and Hades' era pinch the spicy strip, and he could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. At this point, all his tasks were considered completed. The next step would be left to the Duke and Lord Go. Bufang floated down and landed in front of the restaurant. He sat down on the stone steps in front of the restaurant. Xiao Ai looked at Bufang in surprise. Little Hu, who was in Yu's arms, jumped into Bufang's arms, stuck out his tongue, and licked Bufang's cheek, as if saying, "This fox also wants a weapon, of course." Bufang just rubbed Little Hu's head and ignored her. 2 dukes were fighting Gluttony's soul overlord. For a moment, he didn't manage to gain the upper hand. Instead, he felt like he was evenly matched. This situation caused the 2 dukes to frown. They had consumed too much of their energy in Duchess Tianlian's domain. It took a lot of effort to break it. Now, facing this great soul overlord, they could not defeat him even if they joined hands. Cursed Goddess Soul's face was very unsightly. The army of 100,000 soul demons was destroyed by Bufang, a chef. Almost half of the soul demons burned themselves, and countless souls were swallowed by the iron puppet. The rest of the soul demons were still grabbing food, floating in midair. Were those stinky, spicy, and ugly food worth these soul demons being so crazy about? In front of the restaurant, you walked slowly. That gave Xiao AI pause. Bufang could not help but frown and look at you. In the distance, holding the bow of bliss, Hutu slowly walked out, walking side by side with you. They looked at each other and seemed to see the determination in each other's eyes. The next moment, the cursed power soared into the sky. Rumble. You and Hutu immediately turned into streams of light and rushed into the sky. Cursed Goddess Soul was taken aback. Then, her eyes shone brightly as she stared at you and Hutu, who were approaching in midair. At this moment, the three cursed goddesses collided. You finally dared to come out. Soul was very excited. In terms of fighting prowess, she was really not afraid of you and Hutu. She was afraid that the two of them would not come out. That chef was really too strange. She had thought that he was bragging that he could fight an army alone. Now, she felt that her face was stinging. That chef really can fight an army. Buzz, a black orb appeared in Soul's hand. You and Huda looked at her indifferently. The next moment, the three of them began to fight. Yu's fighting prowess was only at the level of a Saint of the Great Path, while Hutu was a peak Saint of the Great Path. Even when they joined forces, they were still suppressed by Soul. However, they had to step forward. Void City had fallen into a state of chaos. Many people had already lost their lives for a mere king-level expert. Now it was time to put an end to this. The battle between the three cursed goddesses had alarmed everyone. The nobles were watching from a distance. At Soul's order, the soul demons also stopped attacking, except for the battle between the great soul overlords and the Lord Go. The noisy and chaotic Void City quieted down. Everyone's attention was focused on the sky. You and Hutu are fighting Soul together. Down below, Bufang had a serious look in his eyes. Owner Bu, what should we do? Her Excellency Nethery is not strong enough. How can she be a match for Her Excellency Soul? Even with Her Excellency Hutu, it won't work. Her Excellency Soul has broken through to the level of a chaotic saint. Xiao AI kept chattering anxiously in Bufang's ear. She was very worried. She could not help but worry. After all, if Nethery and Hutu were killed by Soul, there would be no suspense about the throne of Void City. Don't worry, Bufang said faintly. He said as he ate the oyster pancake. He also handed Xiao AI an oyster pancake. Xiao AI was worried and had no appetite now. However, after glancing at the pancake, she took it from Bufang's hand and ate it while worrying. Rumble. Xiao Bai returned. His whole body was steaming, and his purple eyes were flashing. He had devoured too many soul demon souls. His aura was extremely terrifying now, just like that of the great demon. That's enough. Don't overeat, Bufang said, patting Xiao Bai's round belly. Xiao Bai raised his hand, scratched his round head, and nodded. The void was divided into two camps. The battle between the three cursed goddesses amazed everyone. It was a show that belonged to the three women. Of course, compared to the battle between the three cursed goddesses, the Duke-level battle in the distance was even more shocking. They were the real machines of destruction, and Void City was almost destroyed by them. Bufang, who was sitting in front of the restaurant and eating an oyster pancake, suddenly paused. Where's that little girl? Bufang asked Xiao AI, whose mouth was covered with oil. Oh, I don't know, Xiao AI said with a round mouth. That little girl has a mysterious origin. She has been in the restaurant all this time. So where is she now? Bufang frowned, but he did not think too much about it. Rumble. Envy Great Soul Overlord was a little confused now. Before this, he had been suppressing the black dog in front of him. However, ever since the black dog picked up the bowl of meat, the black dog seemed to have gone berserk. Whenever he ate a piece of stinking meat, an exquisite dog paw would come at him. Both its strength and aura were much stronger than before. The next moment, Envy Great Soul Overlord was knocked to the ground. Even the dog-beating stick was knocked away. That was a weapon given to him by the Soul God. He was a little dazed after a few consecutive paws, and he needed a break. In the distance, Greed, Great Soul, Overlord had nothing left to live for. Ever since Hades' era grabbed the spicy strip, he had been in high spirits. He kept whipping him with the spicy strip. The golden spicy strip lashed at his body, causing the sinful energy in his body to vanish. Is that spicy strip poisonous? The black scissors were knocked away. Greed, Great Soul, Overlord's body was covered with whip marks. Now, he could only keep fleeing in the void. He was afraid that this guy would catch him and give him a good beating. Hades' era's eyes were full of excitement. With the death spicy strip in his mouth and the golden spicy strip in his hand, he kept whipping. The Great Soul Overlord, who was suppressing him, was thrown into a panic. He was very excited. Sure enough, spicy strips are the best. Duchess Nightmare and Duchess Yunlan did not want to kill Gluttony Great Soul Overlord now, because it was not realistic. They just wanted to keep this guy busy. In the distance, the three cursed goddesses were fighting. They could not get involved in such a battle. Suddenly, there was a flash in the void. The next moment, a Great Soul Overlord, covered with whip marks and emitting black smoke, rushed to Gluttony Great Soul Overlord's side. Both Duchess Nightmare and Duchess Yunlan were taken aback. Hey, don't run if you have the guts. Have a taste of I's 13 whips of the spicy strip. It's a 360-degree whip with no blind spots. Hades' era stepped through the air and rushed over. He glanced at Duchess Yunlan. His eyes lit up, and he smiled. Hello, beautiful. Boom. Envy Great Soul Overlord was also knocked flying backward. His face was covered with dog paw prints. His aura was extremely weak. Neither of them had expected that they, who were holding the weapons given by the Soul God, would be suppressed so miserably. The main reason was that the man and the dog, who seemed to be on steroids, made it impossible for them to fight back. Lord Go rolled his tongue, swallowed a piece of sweet and sour ribs, and walked slowly toward them with his elegant cat-like steps. Envy Great Soul Overlord shuddered with fear. There was no doubt that Bufong's camp had won in terms of high-end combat power. Bufong was not surprised by this. Lord Go and Era had awakened their heaven god consciousness by relying on dishes. Lord Go used sweet and sour ribs, and Hades' Era used spicy strips. Even if these two dishes were not their weapons, the boost they gave them was absolutely terrifying. Damn it, wrath, sloth, and lust are fighting the almighty experts of the primitive universe. They can't come here. Otherwise, when the seven of us join forces, all these people will die. Envy Great Soul Overlord growled. If they did not seize Void City in this battle, it would be a crushing defeat for the Soul Demon universe. Buzz, Gluttony Great Soul Overlord, did not want to fight either. They pulled away and appeared in front of the army of soul demons. Gluttony Great Soul Overlord glanced at the defeated army. His face grew livid. He had spent an hourglass of time and space, and this was the result he got. He could not believe that his army of soul demons was stopped by a chef. Damn it. Sure enough, all chefs must die. As His Excellency Soul God said, chefs are the most abominable existences in this world. In midair, Gluttony Great Soul Overlord's eyes turned and rested on Bufong. His eyes were full of killing intent. He was thinking that he had to find an opportunity to kill this chef. Only then could the army of soul demons be invincible. Otherwise, for the soul demons, as long as this chef existed, they would not be able to rest easy. Bam! Energy collided in midair. Huda's face was extremely unsightly. He was surrounded by ghostly green curse power, and the cursed snake was sticking out its forked tongue and roaring into the sky. The Bow of Bliss had no advantage over Soul at all. The Soul God Spear in her hand was even more powerful than the Bow of Bliss. What should I do? If this goes on, they might really lose. Huda was a little anxious. In fact, she had already informed the primitive universe with a voice transmission, but she did not know if anyone would come to help her. Otherwise, she might not be able to survive this disaster. Although the army of soul demons seemed to be retreating, at least half of them were still eyeing them. In terms of high-end combat power, The great soul overlords were strong enough to compete with them. It would not do them any good to delay. Huda was a little anxious. In the distance, Soul, on the other hand, looked very calm because she was confident of victory. Hutu and you wanted to put up a fight, but they had no chance at all. With such a good card in her hand, how could the tables be turned so easily? She looked at you. Suddenly, she found that you seemed to be very calm. In front of the restaurant, the corner of Bu Fong's mouth twitched slightly. In midair, you, wrapped in curse power, slowly took out a flatbread. Then, she stuffed it in her mouth and took a bite. Boundless fortune chi and primal chaos chi immediately intertwined. Bu Fong's enhanced fortune flatbread. This was the trump card that made you so confident. Chapter 1768. The Fortune Flatbread. It was a trick that Bu Fong had developed a long time ago. However, as his cultivation base grew, the effect of the flatbread was not as good as before, and Bu Fong had even forgotten about it. After all, its effect was heaven-defying, but that was only if one's cultivation base was not strong enough. At the level of a heaven god, the fortune energy in the flatbread could no longer provide fortune. In other words, the flatbread could not provide the fortune that a heaven god needed. Therefore, Bu Fong had improved it. After all, it was the product of his research, and it was not difficult for Bu Fong to improve it. Besides, there was Neo Han San who specialized in research in the heaven and earth farmland. With the addition of chaotic energy, the improved flatbread was completed. It was also the first time that the improved flatbread appeared on such an important occasion. You held the flatbread in her hand and faced Cursed Goddess Soul. Hutu, on the other hand, was a little confused. Soul, on the other hand, did not take it seriously. The gap between their strength was not something that could be closed by a flatbread. The gap between a chaotic saint and a saint of the Great Path was not only in terms of chaotic energy. They also had an understanding of the will of heaven and earth. Hutu held the bow of bliss in her hand. This divine artifact from the primitive universe had helped her a lot. Otherwise, she would not even be qualified to fight Soul. After all, this divine artifact came from a chaotic saint of the primitive universe. The sword shot out, whistling through the air, piercing through the void, and shattering it. Soul raised her hand. The pitch-black power of sin wrapped around her hand and blocked the spinning arrow. After all, Hutu could not bring out the full power of the Bow of Bliss. After all, it was a divine artifact that could shoot through the sun with one arrow. She held the fortune flatbread in her hand, on which the fortune energy and chaotic energy were swirling. She stared at it with her beautiful eyes, then opened her little mouth and ate it one bite at a time. Huda was dumbfounded. Why is this girl still eating flatbread at a time like this? But Yu's cultivation base is not strong enough, and Hutu can't be counted on. Buzz. The void kept trembling. Hutu clenched her teeth. Her spirit awareness kept surging, and she shot arrows one after another. The bowstring on the Bow of Bliss kept plucking. Everyone in the surroundings was paying attention to this battle. After all, this battle would decide the outcome of the competition between the cursed goddesses. However, judging from the current situation, you and Hutu may not be a match for Soul even if you join forces on the Soul Demon side. Gluttony Great Soul Overlord narrowed his eyes and watched with excitement in them. Envy Great Soul Overlord and Greed Great Soul Overlord were also hovering in midair. Although they were being suppressed by Lord Go and Hades Era, they were still able to defeat Lord Go. But they were not the main characters in this competition. The main character was Soul. Bu Fong sat on the ground, gasping for air. However, his eyes were fixed on Nethery, who was hovering in midair. Although I've given you the enhanced fortune flatbread, things like the fortune flatbread mainly depend on luck. Of course, Yu's luck had always been good, so although Bu Fong was nervous, he wasn't too worried. Rumble, Lord Go, Hades Era, and the two dukes landed one after another. For a moment, the atmosphere was somewhat stagnant. Lord Go stuffed the last piece of sweet and sour ribs into his mouth and smacked his lips. With the death spicy strip in his mouth and the golden spicy strip in his hand, Hades' era could not stop chewing excitedly. Duchess Yunlan and Duchess Nightmare glanced at Bufong, sighed, and turned to look at the battle in the sky. They were protecting you and Hutu, but now it seemed that they seemed to have neglected their duty. Duchess Tianlian had tried her best to stop them, and there was a reason. What's going on with the Queen of Curses? Bufong took a deep breath and said, Marquis Langu and the others might not know, but the two dukes should know. Duchess Nightmare glanced at Bufong. Her smoky hair waved in the wind, and her face was cold. She did not answer. Duchess Yunlan shook her head. There were some things that she did not know. Void City had been cornered by the army of soul demons, but the Queen of Curses still had not shown up. They were very puzzled by this. In midair, Soul approached Hutu inch by inch. Hutu was forced to retreat. She felt a great pressure. The sneer on Soul's face made Hutu frightened. The bow of bliss trembled and fired thousands of arrows, but they still could not stop Soul. Gulp! You swallowed the last fortune flatbread. She burped. You stuck out her tongue and licked her lips. Then, her eyes lit up slightly. In fact, she was looking forward to it. Of course, she knew about the fortune flatbread. It was Bufong's specialty. However, you did not know what effect it would have. She swallowed the enhanced fortune flatbread. Everything seemed to have quietened down. Nothing strange happened. Hutu could not help but despair when she saw this. Why is this girl in a daze in such an emergency? Boom! Tens of thousands of sinful energies gathered together and formed the head of a terrifying beast, striking Hutu's body. Hutu's face turned pale, and she staggered backward. The bow of bliss was knocked away. Hutu's face was drained of blood. We're going to lose. We're going to lose. Once she was defeated, the throne of Void City would become Soul's. The war between the primitive universe and the soul demon universe would be completely changed. Hutu closed her eyes in despair. Soul stepped into the void, and the power of sin spread behind her. The next moment, she approached Hutu in a flash. Her eyes were full of killing intent. Too many accidents had happened, so she dared not to leave out the possibility of an accident. So, you and Hutu must die. Only dead people will not cause any accidents. After killing these two cursed goddesses, I'll take my time to deal with the chef. When she sits on the throne of Void City, I'll exterminate him. I'll be the final victor. I'll be the final victor. Rumble. Soul's eyes were filled with excitement. The power of 7 sins fused into one and turned into an extremely sharp spear, the tip of which exuded evil power. It looked like the sharpest spear in the world. In the distance, the 3 great soul overlords could not help but envy as they watched. That's the spear of sin. Although it's only a projection, its power is comparable to our soul artifacts. The great soul overlord was a little jealous. The spear of sin was a weapon that belonged to the soul god. Legend had it that a single spear could pierce several universes. It could destroy countless living beings. It was a peerless weapon that stood at the pinnacle of the universe. Although what Soul had condensed was not the real spear of sin, its power was not weak either. It would not be difficult for the spear to kill Hutu. In fact, it could even pierce both Hutu and you. Die! Soul focused her eyes, and killing intent exploded out of her. The long spear in his hand was suddenly thrown down with the intention of piercing through Hutu. Suddenly, at the moment when the spear fell, Hutu was about to lose all hope. A fair and slender palm suddenly emerged. It grabbed the spear. The spear could not move any further. Oh, that gave Soul pause. She jerked her head up and looked at the person who had stopped her spear. It's you. At this moment, Yu's figure seems to have changed slightly. Her black hair fluttered in the wind, and her eyes were as deep as the black holes of the universe. Blue veins could be seen spreading from the corners of her eyes to her ears, giving her an extremely tough look. Most importantly, there seemed to be a crystal inlaid between Yu's brows. It was a Tao crystal, the crystal that represented a universe. What's going on? The next moment, a vast amount of chaotic energy surged toward her. Rumble. Cursed Goddess Soul did not expect this at all. You is a saint of the great path, and your cultivation base is not very strong. But at this moment, the aura and pressure you're showing are even comparable to that of a Duke-level expert. How is this possible? Cursed Goddess Soul was dumbfounded. The spear could not go any further. You exerted force in her palm, and a ghostly green cursed snake coiled around her and thrust out. Rumble. Soul's black cursed snake collided with Yu's ghostly green cursed snake. The collision shook violently, and a rumbling sound filled the air. Surprisingly, Soul took a few steps back in midair. She was a chaotic saint. Yet, she lost to a saint of the great path in a collision. All of this, it was completely beyond her knowledge and understanding. Huda was dumbfounded. She did not seem to have expected that you would suddenly go berserk. In front of the restaurant, Duchess Yunlan's eyes widened. As Yu's protector, how could she not know Yu's cultivation base? But now, you had forced Soul back with one move. This is too strange. Duchess Nightmare could not help but have a strange look on her face. Yunlan, has your cursed goddess been pretending to be weak all this time? Duchess Yunlan rolled her eyes. She knew nothing. The corner of Bu Fong's mouth twitched slightly. Xiao Ai covered her mouth in surprise. I can't believe Her Excellency Nethery is so powerful. The fortune flatbread has indeed worked. Hades' era's eyes lit up. He held a death-spicy strip between his lips. He had a deep impression of the fortune flatbread. It had forcibly pulled the soul of his father, Hades Tenzing, out of the transmigration. It was enough to show how amazing it was. This is the enhanced version of the fortune flatbread, mixed with chaotic energy. According to the fluctuation of the law of time that erupted from the flatbread just now, the current you should be you in the future. But I don't know how long you will be in the future. At least Yu's current cultivation base should have reached the peak of the chaotic saint realm, which is equivalent to a Duke-level expert. Bu Fong said. He then explained the reason for Yu's sudden outburst. A flatbread? Because of a flatbread? Many people were stunned. Is this flatbread so heaven-defying? It's not heaven-defying. This kind of improvement has a time limit. If it's really heaven-defying, it should be when you directly jump to the chaotic saint level and stay there forever. Bu Fong smacked his lips and said. In midair, Hutu was pleasantly surprised. She looked at you, but the look in her eyes made her shudder. At this moment, you seemed to be a supreme existence high above the 9 heavens. She was even nobler than dukes. Impossible. You can't defeat me. Cursed Goddess Soul couldn't believe it. Buzz, the black ball appeared in her hand again. It spun and turned into the Spear of Sin. He grabbed the spear and threw it at Nethery. In midair, Yu's dress fluttered in the wind. She slowly raised her hand and caught the Spear of Sin. The cursed snake coiled around the spear. Puff! The Spear of Sin turned into black smoke and dissipated. In the blink of an eye, Yu appeared at Soul's side. She threw out a palm. Soul hurriedly threw out a palm. The two palms collided. Soul's body seemed to have suffered a serious injury, and she was hit by a tremendous force and smashed into the ground. An uproar rang through heaven and earth. The atmosphere in Void City changed in an instant. I can't believe that Her Excellency's Soul, the strongest of the 3 cursed goddesses, was beaten to death by you. The Soul Demon camp also let out roars. The eyes of the 3 great soul overlords flashed with fierce gleams. Rubble tumbled in the ruins. Soul got up from the rubble. Suddenly, she felt a chill run down her spine. In midair, Yu raised her hand, which was now covered with cursed snakes. The next moment, they piled up in front of her, their heads less than an inch away from her eyes. In the blink of an eye, they could tear her apart. After eating the fortune flatbread, they had brought you out from 10,000 years in the future. Soul was completely defeated. She did not dare to move. Her mind was trembling. Hutu pursed her lips in disbelief. The nobles around her were dumbfounded. The result of the battle was obvious. Her hair spread out and brushed Yu's face. Her delicate face was as calm as still water. You looked at Soul as if she had just accomplished something insignificant. You lost. Chapter 1769. Yu's voice was indifferent. At this moment, she exuded a different temperament. At least, she was completely different from the Yu of the past. Not only had Yu's cultivation base skyrocketed, but her mentality had also changed. One had to admit that the fortune flatbread was indeed heaven-defying. The enhanced version of the fortune flatbread was even more unparalleled. 10,000 years later, Yu's mentality and cultivation base were far beyond the level you are now. After all, as one lived for a long time, one would see more things and one's mentality would naturally change. Soul was struck dumb, and her eyes seemed to have turned gray. The result of the battle between the three cursed goddesses was beyond everyone's imagination. Soul, who was the most likely to win, was lying miserably on the ground. On the other hand, Nethery, who was the least likely to win, had become the true victor. The cursed snake flicked its forked tongue, and a terrible aura gushed over Soul's face, making her feel real despair. The pupils of the three great soul overlords constricted at this moment. This woman could actually defeat Soul, who was holding the Spear of Sin. How was that possible? Although the Spear of Sin was not Soul's true form, it was the supreme weapon of Soul God. How could it be easily suppressed by this woman? Rumble. The three great souls took the initiative. Their auras fluctuated as if they had caused landslides and tsunamis. It caused the heavens and earth to change drastically. The army of soul demons behind them also opened their mouths and roared. Duchess Nightmare and Duchess Yunlan exchanged a glance and saw the solemn look in each other's eyes. Then, they turned around and rose into the air in a flash, facing the army of soul demons from a distance. Marquis Langu and the others followed behind the two dukes. With the dukes around, they were more confident. In midair, the soul demon camp and the dukes of Void City seemed to be clashing. The nobles of Void City, who had chosen to stand behind Soul, scattered like monkeys when a tree fell. At this moment, like monkeys scattering when a tree falls, they quickly gathered behind the dukes. Soon, they had formed a powerful army. Although the cohesion of this army was not good, its fighting prowess was undeniable. Huta was overjoyed. She thought it was all over, but she never thought that you would give her such a surprise. Fortune flatbread? I can't believe that Chef's fortune flatbread has such a magical effect. She let you suppress Soul in a crushing manner. For a moment, Huta was a little curious about the fortune flatbread. However, none of this mattered now. They had won. The contest for the throne of Void City was once again in suspense. In other words, they, who originally had no chance of winning, now had a 50-50 chance of winning against Soul. Holding the bliss bow, Huta narrowed his eyes. In the distance, Soul was taken away by the three great soul overlords, looking a little lost. Soul was still in disbelief. She couldn't figure out why you, who is only a saint of the Great Path, could defeat her with a piece of bread. Buzz, Duchess Yunlan appeared at Nethery's side, looking at the gradually weakening aura of you, who originally had the temperament of a female tyrant, gradually turning into the familiar you who didn't like to speak. Duchess Yunlan narrowed her eyes. As Yu's protector, she didn't have much hope for you. She never thought that you would give her such a big surprise. You had earned her a lot of face. Duchess Nightmare looked at you in surprise, and the look in her eyes was somewhat complicated. She couldn't believe that the weakest cursed goddess had crushed Soul because of a piece of bread. However, no matter what, the original crisis situation was completely stabilized. The biggest problem now was the army of soul demons in front of them. The army from the soul demon universe was the most difficult to deal with. 3 Sin great soul overlords and half of the soul demon army, which had been killed by the dark cuisine, were still alive. Even the 3 dukes felt rather serious. Soul's mind was a little confused. Gluttony great soul overlord supported her body. Wake up. You've only lost one match. The throne of Void City will definitely belong to you. This is the will of the Soul God. Gluttony great soul overlord said. Soul's mind was much clearer now, and her eyes were much brighter. That's right. Her goal was to sit on the throne of Void City. She wanted to welcome the Soul God's awakening and arrival with a noble identity. So, how could she lose confidence just because of one defeat? Soul's eyes became sharp again. The three great soul overlords stood behind her, their auras merging into one. Yes, Soul knew very well that even though she was defeated, the throne of Void City still belonged to her. Because she was not alone. Behind her stood the entire Soul Demon universe. She had the army of Soul Demons and the great Soul Overlord supporting her. These were things that you, who had won by trickery, did not have. The army of Soul Demons and the army of the exiles whose wills were controlled. Even though the army of the nobles of Void City had returned to the Dukes, it was still no match for the army behind Soul. The difference in numbers was too great. The army of exiles was still manageable. But the army of Soul Demons was really terrifying. Don't be so wishy-washy. Just crush them and destroy them. Envy Great Soul Overlord took a step forward and roared. The next moment, the power of sin exploded out of his body, which was as thin as a bamboo pole. However, on the opposite side of him, Lord Go raised his dog paw, causing Envy Great Soul Overlord's aura to stagnate. After all, the paw had left a deep impression on him. Hades Era also raised the golden spicy strip in his hand. The corner of Greed Great Soul Overlord's mouth twitched. Fight! Gluttony Great Soul Overlord's face was cold. He suddenly opened his mouth and gave the order. The army of Soul Demons behind him charged out again. This time, without Bufong's dark cuisine, who else could stop the army of Soul Demons? The nobles of Void City did not expect the army of Soul Demons to appear with such means. Otherwise, given enough time, they could have built a line of defense to resist the army. The moment the war broke out, the army of nobles of Void City clashed with the army of Soul Demons. The war was destined to be tragic. The sky darkened, and a terrible, murderous aura filled the sky. The buildings of Void City collapsed, and the ground cracked. Every place had turned into a cruel battlefield. As for the high-end combatants, they started fighting one after another. The three great soul overlords began to fight each other desperately. A great soul overlord was very strong, not weaker than a duke. Even though Nethery had 4 duke-level experts on her side, they were not weak. However, he could only stall 3 great soul overlords. Huda landed in front of the restaurant. As Bufong sat on the ground, they came before Bufong. The battle in the sky was still ongoing. Xiaobai was guarding Bufong. Some soul demons who crossed the line of defense and attacked Bufong had their heads crushed by Xiaobai. Xiaobai's fighting ability began to grow as he swallowed more souls, but he might not be as strong as a duke. However, when facing a duke, Xiaobai was not afraid anymore. Perhaps it was Soul's order, or perhaps it was the 3 great soul overlords' hatred for chefs. More and more soul demons kept breaking through the line of defense and charging toward Bufong. They wanted to tear Bufong apart. Of course, these soul demons were all crushed by Xiaobai in the end. In an instant, the battle had reached its climax. In fact, the army of Void City was retreating. After all, the fighting prowess of the soul demons was too strong. They were not easy to kill and could be resurrected easily. This was the characteristic of the soul demons. Unless they cooked dark cuisine like Bufong, they would not be able to do it. However, dark cuisine was also a technical skill, and it was not something that ordinary people could cook. The nobles of Void City were not united to begin with. Some of them found that the situation was not good in the middle of the battle, so they chose to flee. So soon, the army of Void City was routed. Apart from the high-end combatants who were still fighting, Void City suffered a crushing defeat in the confrontation between the armies. At the same time, the top-grade soul overlords who had their hands and feet free joined the battle of the high-level experts. This doubled the pressure on the dukes. Rumble. Duchess Nightmare's face darkened. She glanced around and found that the army of soul demons was wreaking havoc. She was besieged by several top soul overlords and under the pressure of Gluttony Soul Overlord. For a moment, there were signs of defeat. Of course, it was also because the battle with Duchess Tianlian had weakened them. Bam! The countless soul demons smashed Duchess Nightmare and Duchess Yunlan to the ground. They retreated quickly and retreated into the restaurant. After fighting off two great soul overlords, Lord Go and Hades Era also retreated. With the death spicy strip dangling from the corner of his mouth, Hades Era narrowed his eyes. Buffon, young man, this battle won't be easy. We don't have enough people. Without your dark cuisine, these soul demons are not easy to deal with. The more we kill, the more they come. Hades Era looked at Buffon. Sure enough, chefs were the nemesis of soul demons. All the nobles had fled. Only a few acquaintances were left in front of the restaurant. Buffon rose to his feet and patted the dust off his clothes. Then, he led the crowd into the restaurant and closed the door. Rumble. With that, the restaurant door was closed as if it was isolated from the noise and the war. Inside the restaurant, everyone's spirits were a little low. Although Nethery had defeated Soul, it did not make any difference. Soul's trump cards and forces were too strong. With the entire Soul Demon universe as her backing, there was basically no chance of her losing. Marquis Langu and the others were covered with wounds. Viscount Ash's face was pale. She had almost exhausted all her energy. Master Jinyong, on the other hand, had a bitter look on his face. He had thrown out all his stock of pills. However, the situation was getting more and more critical. The soul demons had surrounded the restaurant. The great soul overlord's laughter rang out in the sky. These fellows can only be cowards now. Beat them all and flatten this restaurant. Gluttony great soul overlord's roar echoed through the sky. Then, he took the initiative to strike. Monstrous power of sin surged as he threw out a palm. The palm was extremely huge. It fell from the sky and smashed over the restaurant. It was going to flatten the restaurant. Boom! However, the ground around the restaurant exploded. However, the restaurant, which had suffered a powerful attack, was unscathed. The people in the restaurant were amazed. Even the two dukes were very curious. Is the Queen of Curses really not going to make a move? Void City is already in a mess. Inside the restaurant, Buffon was holding a cup of hot tea and sipping it unhurriedly. Nourished by the tea, his spirit sea was slowly recovering. The Queen will strike when it's time, Duchess Nightmare said with a cold face. Something must have happened to the Queen of Curses. Buffon shook his head. Looking at Duchess Nightmare, who was trying her best to protect the Queen, he did not say anything. It was not a good idea to pin his hopes on the Queen, who did not know what was going on. It seemed that he had to rely on himself. Boom! The restaurant suffered another heavy blow. The power of the three great soul overlords attacking at the same time was almost enough to turn Void City upside down. However, they still failed to break the restaurant. The restaurant provided by the system had an outstanding defense. Buffon had known this for a long time, but the others did not. Although the restaurant had withstood the attacks of the great soul overlords over and over again, it had not been able to withstand the attacks. What if the restaurant could not withstand the attacks and exploded with a loud bang? The people were very anxious. However, Buffon was still very calm. He lay back in his chair, held a teacup, and sipped the turquoise tea. He drank the tea and ate the oyster pancake. When the last sip of tea was finished, Buffon slowly rose from his chair. Boom! The restaurant shook violently again, and the ground around it cracked in an instant. Buffon breathed a sigh of relief. His eyes narrowed slightly. With a shake of his hand, a menu appeared in front of him. The menu glowed with a golden light. Well, it's time to call for backup. Launch a counterattack. Chapter 1770. Reinforcements? You're just a chef. What kind of reinforcements can you call? Could it be that he could summon a powerful army? The hourglass of time and space was a divine artifact of the universe, a top-notch consumable, and it could only be used once. If the Soul Demon universe had not wanted to help Soul sit on the throne of Void City, it might not have used it at all. He had twisted time and space and summoned a powerful army of soul demons. So, what kind of reinforcements could Buffon call for? Many people in the restaurant were a little confused. However, Marquis Langu and the others were very confident in Buffon, mainly because Buffon had created too many miracles. Weren't Lord Go and Hades' era the reinforcements Bu Fong had called for? Lord Go glanced at Bu Fong. When he saw Bu Fong take out the golden recipe, his face froze. It looked like Bu Fong was going to cook the dish in the recipe. Was he going to summon Heaven God Destruction? Lord Go could not help but feel a little excited. Of the 5 heaven gods of the chaotic universe, except for Heaven God Transmigration, who had fled to the Soul Demon universe, only he and Era had awakened. Heaven God Destruction and Heaven God Space had not returned yet. However, when the Temple of Heaven God Destruction appeared, Lord Go guessed that Heaven God Destruction was about to return. As for when he would return, it would depend on when Bu Fong cooked the dish. Therefore, when Bu Fong said he was going to call for reinforcements, Lord Go believed him the most. Outside the restaurant, the rumbling continued. The soul demons, on the other hand, were enjoying themselves. They kept attacking the restaurant. However, the restaurant did not budge. Its defense was not something those soul demons could break. Bu Fong lifted the curtain, turned, and went into the kitchen. Then, he began to cook at a steady pace. At this moment, the trembling of the restaurant had almost disappeared. In the kitchen, Bu Fong took out the golden recipe. Golden light flowed on the menu. It was the aura of the god of cooking's menu, and Bu Fong was very familiar with it. According to Lord Go's recipe, sweet and sour ribs was cooked. Era's recipe turned out to be spicy strips. He wondered what kind of delicacy would be cooked from this page of recipes. Heavenly Destruction God. It should be a very domineering existence, right? A gigantic existence that could destroy the heavens with a single bite, destroy the earth with a single kick, and shatter the stars with a single tail. Bu Fong imagined Heavenly Destruction God's appearance in his mind. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly as he shook his head. To be honest, Bu Fong was quite curious about the Heavenly Destruction God. Among the 5 great Empyrean gods, the one with the strongest destructive power was naturally the Empyrean God of Destruction. The latter symbolized destruction and had mastered the ultimate law, the law of destruction. This also meant that the other party's destructive power was unparalleled. Bu Fong didn't start cooking immediately. He leaned against the stove and closed his eyes. He began to simulate the cooking method of the dishes recorded on the menu in his spirit sea. Time was ticking away slowly. The dishes in the God of Cooking's menu were amazing. Even Bu Fong could not guess what he was going to cook unless he did it himself. He had to simulate the cooking method in his spirit sea and make sure it was correct before he began to cook. It took a lot of energy to simulate the process. Fortunately, although Bu Fong had exhausted his mental force fighting the army of soul demons, his mental force had recovered a lot. But now it had recovered a lot. It should not be too difficult to cook this dish. As Bu Fong closed his eyes, the kitchen was very quiet. Slowly, the energy continuously flowed around outside the restaurant. The roars of the soul demons rang out incessantly. However, it did not seem to be as noisy as before. Duchess Yunlan and Duchess Nightmare frowned. Through the window, they could see that many soul demons seemed to have left the vicinity of the restaurant and were flying toward the distance. Damn it, they're going to the Queen's palace, Duchess Nightmare said, her pupils constricting. We're hiding here, but Soul can't wait to inherit the throne, Duchess Yunlan sighed. Although the restaurant's defense was invincible, it not only blocked the soul demons, but it also bound them here. Duchess Yunlan and Duchess Nightmare looked at each other and saw the grave look in each other's eyes. The Queen's palace was the most important place in Void City, and the soul demons must not be allowed to set foot in it. As dukes, they had the responsibility and obligation to guard that holy place. Therefore, both of their eyes were filled with determination. After that, they stepped out of the restaurant. Outside, some soul demons roared and flew toward them. In the hands of the 2 dukes, these soul demons were as fragile as ants. It was easily obliterated and crushed. Lord Go and Hades' era did not go out. Hutu and you were also left behind by Duchess Nightmare and Duchess Yunlan. The main reason was that they did not want to put the 2 cursed goddesses in danger. The moment the 2 dukes walked out of the restaurant, they attracted the attention of the soul demons. A swarm of soul demons came chasing after them. Hovering in midair, Envy Great Soul Overlord led an army to stop the two dukes. A Great Soul Overlord was no weaker than a duke. And in the Soul Demon universe, there were 6 such Great Soul Overlords. In fact, among them, the top Great Soul Overlord were so strong that they were almost as strong as soul gods. They were not existences that dukes could resist. This was also why the Soul Demon universe could be so fearsome. In many universes, the Soul Demon universe and the Primitive universe were both top universes. When the top chaotic saint-level experts collided, the two universes could not do anything to each other. Therefore, as long as Void City was the factor that broke the balance, the Soul Demon universe would not be able to do anything to the other. While holding the Primitive universe back, the Soul Demon universe was still able to send 3 Great Soul Overlords to Void City. This showed that the Soul Demon universe had the upper hand in the confrontation. Bam! Duchess Nightmare and Duchess Yunlon fought the Great Soul Overlord in midair. Duchess Yunlon became serious. She swung her arms and legs, causing terrifying air waves to swirl in the sky. Many soul demons were turned into corpses under the impact of the energy. Duchess Nightmare sped away toward the Queen of Curse's palace. The importance of the palace was self-evident, so she had to protect it. Duchess Yunlon alone stopped Envy Great Soul Overlord and even faced the army of soul demons. She was at a disadvantage, suppressed by so many soul demons, and seemed to be out of breath. But she still tried her best to hold on and resist all this. In a restaurant, the atmosphere was somewhat stagnant. Marquis Langu and the others hesitated for a long time. Their auras were weak, mainly because they had consumed too much energy in the previous battle. But now that Void City was in danger, how could they just sit back and do nothing? After hesitating for a long time, Marquis Langu and the others charged out and fought the many soul demons. Tens of thousands of soul demons engulfed them in an instant. Although they were stronger than a single soul demon, there were too many of them. They were completely suppressed. In a restaurant, Bufong finally opened his eyes. White smoke rose from the top of his head. It was the smoke formed when his spirit sea was operating at a high speed. Bufong's eyes flashed. He shook his hand. The dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in his hand and began to spin. After hundreds of simulations, Bufong had finally completed one, and he was now more confident than ever. Buzz, one ingredient after another flew out of the kitchen. Following an intuition, he began to cook. Bufong's eyes were as calm as still water. A whole piece of fat meat emerged. It was the meat of a top Great Soul Overlord, the ingredient that Pride Great Soul Overlord had transformed into. The ingredient of this level was just right for this dish. It was just right for summoning Heaven God Destruction with this level of ingredient. Holding the dragon bone kitchen knife in one hand, Bufong quickly cut the meat on the chopping board. The meat was minced and diced. It was scattered on the chopping board. Some spirit herbs and spiritual ingredients were also cut into pieces by Bufong. Not only that, but Bufong also took a piece of Soul Overlord meat that was stained with bones and diced the bones. Even the bones were chopped into small pieces. Then, he added other ingredients into the meat and poured them into the wok of oil. Then, he began to fry and fry. Sizzle. Bufong tossed the wok, causing the ingredients in it to tumble. Oil splashed everywhere. The golden oil reflected a myriad of splendors under the light. It did not look like he was cooking with top ingredients. Instead, it looked like he was cooking with ingredients that had been plopped to the extreme. Sizzle. With a sweep of the Chilan transmigration ladle, the ingredients that had piled up in the wok scattered. Then, he sprinkled some sauce on them, making the color of the dish a little darker. The rich aroma of meat and vegetables wafted out and lingered in people's noses. Bufong was not satisfied with his movements. Soon, the dishes were out of the wok, poured into blue and white porcelain bowls, and stacked together. In fact, at this moment, Bufong still did not know what he was going to cook. However, he should have a rough idea in his mind. When he took out the ingredients that had been cut hundreds of thousands of times and turned into a large pile of meat paste, Bu Fang's mind seemed to be getting brighter and brighter. According to the records and descriptions in the recipe, Bu Fang used the meat paste to wrap the stir-fried ingredients as if he was making dumplings. Divine seal dumplings? Bu Fang shook his head. It was not a divine seal dumpling. Because, as the meat paste was kneaded into a ball, the corner of Bu Fang's mouth twitched. Because what he had made was a meatball. At this moment, Bu Fang's mind was getting clearer and clearer. Soul Overlord meatball? It was fundamentally different from the cooking of Soul Demon meatballs. But what Bu Fang could be sure of was that this thing was a Soul Demon meatball. One meatball after another appeared and rolled on the stove. Each meatball seemed to be restless, and there was a majestic energy surging in it. Gurgle, gurgle, Bu Fang poured oil into the black turtle constellation wok, which was mixed with the law of destruction. Wisps of the law of destruction swam in the wok, making it look as if there were dragons swimming in the wok. Bu Fang put the kneaded meatball into the wok. The law of destruction immediately rushed up and wrapped the meatball. Gurgle, the surface of the meatball began to turn golden, and the meat gradually stiffened. A rich, meaty aroma wafted out of it. The aroma seemed to penetrate deep into the soul. Bu Fang's eyes lit up. In the previous God of Cooking's menu, these dishes were cooked with bowls. However, this time, the God of Cooking's menu was cooked with baskets. Looking at the basket of fried, golden Soul Demon meatballs, Bu Fang did not know what to say. At this moment, Bu Fang seemed to have become a noob. This heavenly snake of destruction. Could it be Swish? Small holes appeared on the Qilin transmigration ladle, and the golden Soul Demon meatball rolled out. The oil was still boiling restlessly on the meatball. In the restaurant, an aroma wafted out of the kitchen. It was the aroma of fried food. It was especially alluring, and it made one's stomach uncontrollably hungry. Hutu, you, and the others were puzzled. They did not know what Bu Fang was cooking at this time. Didn't he say he was going to call for backup? Where's the backup? In Yu's arms, Little Hu was twisting restlessly, and her fur began to turn blood red. Her eyes were watery, and her little paws were clutching her head as if something was calling her in the depths of her mind. Little Hu covered her face with her paws. What's wrong with me? Can't you be more reserved? Don't be so impulsive when you smell the aroma of food. You have to control yourself. Little Hu's tail was wagging. Suddenly, a bell rang out of the restaurant. The curtain of the kitchen was lifted. A thin figure walked out of the kitchen. In Yu's arms, Little Hu's eyes lit up. In a flash, she turned into a beam of light and sped toward the figure who had just walked out of the kitchen. Chapter 1771. Boom! The huge city wall collapsed with a rumble. Countless wisps of cursed power swirled in the broken bricks and stones. Great Soul Overlord Scorpion hooks swept the wall slightly and brought it down. Behind the wall was a majestic palace, and in front of it was a statue. There were few people in this place. Only the guards of the Queen of Curse's palace were still fighting bravely. The statue was a graceful, supreme, and majestic figure. It was draped in a veil and wrapped around its jade-like feet. Its eyes were so lifelike that they seemed to be able to see through the universe with a glance and break the cycle of reincarnation with a single thought. Although it was just a statue, the pressure and energy it exuded were unparalleled. This statue was the Queen of Curses. She was the ruler of Void City, the supreme chaos god of the Void universe. In the distance, cursed goddess Soul looked at the statue with a complicated expression. She was a little frightened. She was an existence that surpassed a duke and stood at the peak of the universe. Soul did not know if what she was doing was treason, but she knew that what she was doing now was rebelling against the Queen of Curses. However, she was actually comforting herself in her heart. After all, the Queen of Curses had not appeared for a long time. Even if she did, it was only through voice transmission. The arrival of the army of soul demons gave Soul courage. Perhaps something had happened to the Queen. Otherwise, why was the Queen of Curses looking for an heir? All she had done was to sit on the throne that belonged to her. The pressure emanating from the statue was extremely terrible. That pressure was enough to make people shiver. The statue was huge, towering into the clouds and tens of thousands of feet tall. It was made of a kind of meteorite and possessed supreme power. The cursed power seemed to be wrapped around it bit by bit. An existence like the Queen of Curses should be immortal. Why was she looking for an heir? Soul knew very well that the search for a successor would only be done when one was on the verge of death or about to leave this world. And now, the Queen of Curses was doing this. The more Soul thought about it, the less ashamed and conflicted she felt. The throne of Void City belonged to her, and she would be the one sitting on it. She would also be the heir of the cursed woman. She was just making the process faster. Rumble, the closer they got to the Queen of Curses' palace. The heavens and earth became increasingly gloomy as a terrifying aura filled the air. Greed, Great Soul, Overlord narrowed his eyes. Gluttony, Great Soul, Overlord grinned. Behind him was an army of soul demons that blotted out the sky. The aura of these soul demons was so strong that it seemed to make Void City tremble violently. Boom! The army of soul demons swarmed in. The guards in front of the Queen of Curses' palace roared and resisted. They were all female soldiers, and their cultivation bases were not weak. One of them was a chaotic saint with red eyes. Cursed Goddess Soul, how dare you? You are not the ruler of Void City yet. How dare you invade the Queen of Curses' palace? The leader of the Queen of Curses' guards yelled. He held a silver spear in his hand. The red tassel on the spear fluttered in the wind, giving off a terrifying aura. It was a woman with silver hair. She had been responsible for guarding the Queen's palace for generations. Cursed Goddess Soul said nothing. Her eyes were dark and cold. Now that things had come to this, there was nothing more to say. She could only sit on the throne of Void City. He. Behind Soul, Greed, Great Soul, Overlord moved in a flash. His body suddenly grew to 10,000 feet tall, and with a step he stepped into the square. He glanced at the statue with some fear, then his eyes gleamed fiercely. The Queen of Curses. He. She can't save you anymore. Rumble. Greed, Great Soul Overlord was a Duke-level expert, and he had all the weapons he was given. This made their fighting prowess soar. Greed, Great Soul Overlord Scorpion Tail came smashing down. The guards resisted with all their might, but the moment they were struck by the scorpion tail, the moment they were hit, they bled from their 7 orifices and their minds were destroyed. The power of sin polluted their minds, causing them to vomit blood and die. Greed, Great Soul Overlord was too strong. No one could resist him unless they were Duke-level experts. Moreover, at this moment, there were 2 Great Soul Overlords in Soul's camp. Gluttony, Great Soul Overlord was even more direct. He opened his mouth and sucked. Many experts of Void City simply could not resist the suction and were sucked directly into Gluttony, Great Soul Overlord's mouth. In an instant, there were countless casualties. The 2 Great Soul Overlords opened the way. The Queen of Curses guards couldn't stop them. The silver-haired woman holding the silver spear roared. The spear tore through the sky like a silver dragon. A spear swept out and fiercely stabbed out. Kill. Those who dare to invade the Queen's palace shall be killed without mercy. The woman let out a long shout. In the distance, Duchess Nightmare flew over. His terrifying aura collided head-on with Greed, Great Soul Overlord's barbs. Boom! Many of Greed, Great Soul Overlord's barbs were torn apart. Duchess Nightmare also crashed to the ground. The silver-haired woman was fighting Gluttony, Great Soul Overlord. Her aura was powerful. She seemed to have ignited the power of her curse to strengthen herself. He was actually suppressing Gluttony, Great Soul Overlord. She nodded at the Nightmare Duke. There was sadness in Duchess Nightmare's eyes. The silver-haired woman had used her death to show her determination. She wanted to use her life to protect the Queen's palace. Boom! The ground shook and collapsed. Gluttony, Great Soul Overlord, and the silver-haired woman fought fiercely. The whole of Void City was shaking because of the battle. Duchess Nightmare, on the other hand, was filled with killing intent as she charged toward Gluttony, Great Soul Overlord. Gluttony, Great Soul Overlord's stomach was pierced by the silver-haired woman, and the power of her curse kept corroding the wound. He roared. His eyes were scarlet. Countless soul demons piled up, and the guards fell one after another. The queen's statue was shaking under the impact. Gluttony, Great Soul Overlord grabbed the silver-haired woman's neck with one hand and rushed to the top of the statue. Boom! The silver-haired woman was pressed hard against the statue's forehead. With a thud, the statue was instantly covered with cracks. The silver-haired woman kept roaring. She kept stabbing the spear at Gluttony, Great Soul Overlord. You want to die? I'll fulfill your wish. You and your queen's statue will die together. Gluttony, Great Soul Overlord's eyes gleamed fiercely. Rumble. The silver-haired woman's body was smashed hard against the statue. The huge statue finally could not bear it anymore. It began to crack. The head of the statue was directly smashed into pieces. The silver-haired woman's eyes were lifeless. Her mind seemed to be torn apart. In the distance, Duchess Nightmare's killing intent soared. However, her body was overwhelmed by countless soul demons, and she could not spare a hand to save the silver-haired woman. Darkness. It was as if darkness had really descended on Void City, enveloping the whole city in despair. In the restaurant, the moment Bufong walked out of the kitchen, he paused slightly. Little Hu had turned into a stream of light and shot in front of Bufong. The latter hovered in midair. His blood-colored hair fluttered as if it was being blown by a gust of wind. Little Hu stared at the big basket in Bufong's hand with his big, watery eyes. Inside the basket was actually a basket full of golden meatballs. A rich, meaty aroma wafted out of the meatballs in a restaurant. Hutu, you, and the others all felt a little strange. Owner Bu, where are the reinforcements you found? Xiao Ai's eyes widened. She looked behind Bufong, but she did not see any reinforcements at all. So, what did Bufong do after working so hard for so long? Did he just make a basket of meatballs? What could these meatballs do? Could they kill soul demons? Bufong glanced at Xiao Ai. Sure enough, intelligence is proportional to the amount of breasts you have. In the distance, Huda did not raise any questions. Well, neither did you. Don't worry, Bufong said faintly. Then, Bufong turned his eyes to Little Hu in front of him. The latter's curiosity and desire toward the golden soul meatball made Bufong's heart skip a beat. Of course, this idea was a little bold, but in the distance, Lord Go narrowed his eyes. He naturally saw Little Hu's strange look, but he frowned and shook his head. Impossible. Lord Go had personally tested this Little Hu, and the Little Hu could not sense the law of destruction at all. How could it be Heaven God destruction? Did he have to use Bufong's food to summon the Heaven God back? Suddenly, Lord Go was a little uncertain. Hades' era held a spicy strip between his lips. Could this Little Hu be Heaven God destruction? His expression was very strange. He, the noble Heaven God of life, Hades' era, was actually on the same level as a fox. Bufong rubbed Little Hu's head. He would soon know whether he was Heaven God destruction or not. There was no hurry now. Foxy jumped onto Bufong's shoulder, drooling so much that it almost formed a river. She was very eager, a desire that came from the depths of her soul. In the distance, Xiaopi lay on Xiao Bai's head, calmly blowing bubbles. Bufong reached out his hand, grabbed a scalding golden soul meatball, and gave it to Little Hu. Little Hu opened his mouth wide and swallowed the golden soul meatball in one gulp. Buzz, the moment he swallowed the meatball, Little Hu's body burst out with countless rays of light, which seemed to shoot up to the sky. Then the light faded. Little Hu stuck out his tongue, licked his lips, and burped. Everything seemed as if nothing had happened. Lord Go's eyes widened. You and the others also watched curiously. Hades' era held the spicy strip between his lips, which almost fell to the ground. Is this Little Hu the Heaven God destruction? Since you've eaten the meatball, why don't you do something? For example, transform? Little Hu excitedly ran around on Bufong's shoulder. Then, he looked eagerly at Bufong, as if he wanted more. Bufong looked at Little Hu, who didn't change at all, and frowned slightly. Well, it seems that you're not the heaven god destruction. You're just a glutton. Bufang shook his head in disappointment. Who was this mysterious heaven god destruction? Since you're not the heaven god destruction, don't eat it. These are for the heaven god, Bufang said. After that, he refused Little Hu's eager gaze. Little Hu froze. The next moment, his body suddenly burst out with a dazzling light. It was a loud bang. Like a golden stream of light, he rushed out of the restaurant. Everyone couldn't help but be stunned. What happened? Bufang and the others followed him out. Little Hu rushed out of the restaurant and floated in the air. Then his petite body hovered in midair, facing the army of soul demons outside. Half of the soul demon army had retreated to attack the queen of Curse's palace. However, most of them were still left to flatten the restaurant. Duchess Yunlan and Envy Great Soul Overlord fought until the sky darkened. Many soul demons kept attacking the restaurant. Suddenly, the soul demons froze. Because in the sky, the small blood-colored fox flew into the void of space. The soul demons froze for a moment. Then, they roared one after another. One after another, they rushed into the clouds and went straight toward Little Hu. They wanted to tear Little Hu to pieces. Kill! The soul demons roared. In front of the restaurant, Bufang and the others watched curiously. Hovering in midair, Foxy looked at the thousands of soul demons charging at her. The next moment, she let out a shrill cry, followed by a shrill scream. In the sky above Void City, a huge cloud vortex emerged. The power of destruction swirled in it. The blood-colored fur on Little Hu's body turned golden. Golden light swirled around him. It turned Little Hu into a golden fox. Then Little Hu opened her mouth at the thousands of soul demons. A golden soul orb slowly drifted out, wrapped in the power of destruction. Boom! It sounded like a huge cannon. The golden soul meatball turned into a beam of light and shot whistling toward the thousands of soul demons. In a flash, it fell into the middle of the soul demons. Then it exploded. The sky suddenly turned golden. At this moment, thousands of soul demons were devoured and melted by countless beams of golden light. The power of destruction was crushing them. In midair, a golden fox with golden fur waved in the wind. Little Hu hovered proudly in midair. That's right. I'm Heaven God Destruction. I speak for myself. Chapter 1772. An aura of destruction towered into the sky and shook the earth. Hovering in midair, Little Hu raised his 9 tails, which burst into dazzling golden light and swept across the sky, shocking everything. A golden meatball smashed into the crowd of soul demons and exploded in an instant. In just a flash, everything seemed to have been wiped out. A wave of destruction spread through heaven and earth, turning the thousands of soul demons who were chasing Little Hu into nothingness. The terrible energy made it impossible for those soul demons to react. Even the soul demons, who were at the level of saints of the Great Path, were shattered into pieces by the law of destruction. Countless souls drifted in midair. These were the true forms of soul demons, similar to the souls of human experts. In midair, Xiao Bai was in high spirits. Yes, she was Heaven God Destruction. Would Bufang still give her the golden meatball now? In front of the restaurant, everyone was dumbfounded. Xiao AI, standing next to you, was so shocked that her eyes were about to pop out. Is that still Little Hu? That fox that only knew how to act cute actually had such a terrifying destructive power? Even Hutu sucked in her breath in shock. There were also 9-tailed demon foxes in the primitive universe, but they were not at the same level as this Little Hu. With just 1 meatball, this Little Hu had killed thousands of soul demons. His strength was almost comparable to that of a real almighty expert of the primitive universe. Lord Go and Hades Era were somewhat speechless. It really is this Little Hu. Hades Era sucked on the spicy strip between his lips. Now, the wise and mighty Hades Era is really at the same level as this Little Hu. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched slightly. Although it was beyond his expectation that little who was heaven god destruction, it did not surprise him much. After all, if Hades' era could be heaven god life, what else was impossible? Bufong breathed a sigh of relief. At least, the heavenly destruction god had returned. Sky god of destruction was equivalent to a duke. Now, there was a chance that Bufong could turn the tables. Although it was just one more duke-level powerhouse, it wasn't a big deal. But the difference between them was huge. After all, a duke was an existence that stood at the pinnacle of the universe. Every single one of them could turn the tides of the battle. It was an inconceivable existence. In the void, in the distance, Envy Great Soul Overlord, who was fighting Duchess Yunlan, was shocked. He abruptly turned to look at her. He saw the scene of the little who killing thousands of soul demons with just a spit of phlegm. The corner of his mouth trembled as he was startled. What was going on? This fox, how did it become so strong? Duchess Yunlan saw it, but unlike Envy Great Soul Overlord, she was excited. This way, you and the others will have another chance. In front of the restaurant, Xiao AI glanced at Bufong. Owner Bu, you said to call for backup, but little who doesn't count as backup. Where is the backup you mentioned? Xiao AI glared at him. The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched. He glanced at Xiao AI. Why are you so calculative? No one will marry such a calculative girl. Did Bufong not care about his face? He did not know that little who was heaven god destruction. You pursed her lips and smiled, as if it was rare to see Bufong suffer a setback. Your Excellency Nethery, Xiao AI is right. Little who doesn't count as backup. Little who has been fighting all the time. Xiao AI gritted her teeth and said, You're right. You shook her head. Bufong rolled his eyes. You want backup, right? With a thought, Bufong's mind immediately went into the heaven and earth farmland. The sky was vast and the field were vast. When the wind blew, one could see Nyohan-san. Bufong landed in the heaven and earth farmland. Currently, the heaven and earth farmland was too prosperous and the number of living creatures in it was uncountable. In the center of the heaven and earth farmland, Nyohan-san was lying on a chair, snoring. Recently, there was nothing to study, and Bufong did not come to find him. It was rare for him to be so relaxed. In the distance, Bufong's apprentices were cultivating hard in the heaven and earth farmland, constantly exchanging their cooking experiences. Xiao Xiaolong, Yu Fu, Yang Meiji, and Sorceress and Sheng, the four apprentices. Many apprentices were sitting in front of the wooden hut, exchanging their cooking experiences. Bufong was a very unreliable head chef. He left them behind and wandered. In fact, he did not teach them anything. However, the knowledge Bufong had left behind before he left was enough for them to fully comprehend. Nyohan-san was snoring in the distance. Bufong's apprentices were very familiar with him. Occasionally, they would come to the heaven and earth farmland to ask him for ingredients. Of course, the ingredients in the heaven and earth farmland were not ordinary. Today, Bufong's apprentices were already the top experts in the Hidden Dragon continent or their respective areas. Even the weakest Xiao Xiaolong. Now he had reached the God Emperor level. After all, as Bufong's strength increased, the apprentices who came to the heaven and earth farmland every day to eat the treasures of heaven and earth also benefited from it. Boom! Nyohan-san, who was snoring, suddenly opened his eyes. Then, he sat up from the wooden chair as if he had the last radiance of a setting sun. This startled the group of apprentices who were exchanging their experiences. Onobu is here. Nyohan-san wiped the drool from the corner of his mouth, hurriedly saying. The apprentices were bewildered. Then, they were wild with joy. They had not seen Bufong for a long time. In the distance, not far from the wooden hut, among the spirit herbs, wearing the vermilion robe, Bufong slowly walked over with his hands clasped. After so many years, Bufong's appearance had not changed much. Thus, the apprentices recognized Bufong immediately. Owner Bu! Bufong's apprentices shouted in a high-pitched voice. There were only 4 apprentices present. After all, they could not stay in the heaven and earth farmland all the time. Seeing Bufang, they were pleasantly surprised. Bufang's face was calm. Stepping on the air, he arrived in front of the wooden hut in a short while. What a coincidence. You're all here, Bufang said. Nyo got up with a smile on his face. Owner Bu, are we going to do some hybridization again? Leave everything to this old bull. Nyo said, his eyes bright. Bufang gave Nyo a meaningful look. However, today, Bufang's purpose was not to find them. Bufang looked at the apprentices. Are you guys free? Bufang looked at the apprentices and said. Xiao Xiaolong and the others nodded hurriedly. I'm too free. Owner Bu, I'm already standing at the peak of the hidden dragon continent. I'm so lonely. Xiao Xiaolong shook his head. With his current cultivation base, he was invincible in the hidden dragon continent. Yufu's talent was even better. After all, she used to be the queen of the Serpent Men City. As for Yang Meiji and Sorceress and Shang, their cultivation bases were also very strong. Would he meet 4 apprentices from the hidden dragon continent? The days in the hidden dragon continent were Bufang's happy days. It's good that you're free. Come with me. Let's do something, Bufang said. It's a good chance to test your cooking skills. Xiao Xiaolong's eyes lit up when he heard that they were going to test his cooking skills. He still remembered the fear of being dominated by Bufang. Every time they tested his cooking skills, he couldn't beat Yufu and was punished by Bufang for a long time. Come, Owner Bu, my kitchen knife has been thirsty for a long time. Xiao Xiaolong's beautiful face blushed. Well, do you know how to cook dark cuisine? Bufang asked after thinking for a while. Xiao Xiaolong was speechless. He ignored the 4 confused apprentices. Bufang left the farmland with the 4 apprentices. Nyo followed them. He had not left the farmland for a long time, and it was a good time to see the world. Nyo carried a huge bamboo basket on his back. Then, he eagerly followed behind Bufang. The group left the heaven and earth farmland. In Void City, District, and in front of the god of cooking little restaurant, Xiao Ai stared at Bufang, who was in a daze. Does he think he can hide the fact that he didn't call for backup by being in a daze? Suddenly, Bufang rolled his eyes. Then, he glanced at Xiao Ai, who was stiffening her neck. The next moment, he snapped his fingers. White dots of light emerged in an instant. Slowly, 5 silhouettes emerged from within. Xiao Ai stared blankly at the 5 people who had appeared behind Bufang. 4 women and a wretched Nyonyo? Wait, no, there seems to be a man. The moment the teleportation ended, Xiao Xiaolong's heart surged. Owner Bu, you want us to join the battle? I, Xiao Xiaolong, am invincible in this world with my current strength. Owner Bu, I'm not bragging. It's nothing even if I rush out of the universe. Xiao Xiaolong said triumphantly. Yu Fu, Yang Meiji, and Sheng, and the others were curiously observing their surroundings. Yu paused slightly when she saw them. They were all acquaintances. You, Sister Xiao. Xiao Xiaolong's eyes lit up when he saw you. You nodded. She seemed to understand what Bufang was going to do. They were all Bufang's apprentices. Although their cooking skills might not be as good as Bufang's, they were among the top chefs in the world today. One Bufang could deal with tens of thousands of soul demons, let alone so many chefs. Owner Bu, these reinforcements are so weak. Even I can fight 10 of them with one hand. Xiao Ai frowned as she looked at Xiao Xiaolong and the others. She was a peak god emperor. In this battle, he was nothing more than a fart. What was the use of these people who were weaker than her? Only Nyo was slightly stronger. He was a peak god emperor. As for the others, they were all at the level of ordinary god emperors. Any soul demon at the level of a saint of the Great Path was enough to destroy them. Bufang glanced at Xiao Ai. This little girl really doesn't know how terrifying chefs are. They're all my apprentices. Don't worry, they're strong enough to deal with soul demons, said Bufang. Xiao Ai paused. Apprentices? Xiao Ai was stunned. A restaurant apprentice? But then Bufang raised his hand. Divine power liquid droplets appeared in his palm. They looked just like the god of cooking's divine power liquid drops. Bufang flicked his fingers. The droplet was divided into 4 and distributed to each acolyte. Xiao Xiaolong held them. He was in high spirits, but now he was dumbfounded. What is this place? A huge, terrifying, and oppressive city, and a starry sky that stretches as far as the eye can see. The pressure in the air caused him to shiver. And in the distance there were hordes of black monsters. Every single one of them could crush him. Damn it, why did I, the mighty little dragon god emperor of the hidden dragon continent, become a weakling here? Has the world become so terrible? However, holding Bu Feng's god of cooking's liquid drops, Xiao Xiaolong felt unprecedentedly calm, as if he had found harbor. Well, it's time to test you. You know how to cook dark cuisine, don't you? Bu Feng said. Like this. After that, Bu Feng shook his hand. His hand shook. Very quickly, he finished cooking a bowl of stargazy pie. A strong stench immediately filled the air. The faces of Xiao Xiaolong, Yu Fu, and the others turned a little black. They covered their mouths and almost threw up. Dark cuisine? The owner actually asked us to cook dark cuisine? This thing is really interesting. Looking at the nimble herring head, many apprentices could not help but sigh with emotion. Owner Bu is indeed Owner Bu. He can even cook dark cuisine with such spirituality. Yes, of course I can. Xiao Xiaolong's eyes lit up as he patted his chest and promised. As Bu Feng's apprentices, how could they not know dark cuisine? A dark cuisine was a piece of cake for them. It was as dark as they wanted it to be. Very good. Use your imagination. Let these soul demons feel despair. Bu Feng said. During the cooking process, fuse my divine power liquid drops into the dark cuisine. That way, your dark cuisine will turn into a powerful weapon. Go. Prepare well. Those soul demons in the distance are waiting for you. Bu Feng said, twitching the corner of his mouth. Xiao Xiaolong and the others nodded hurriedly, then took out their own kitchen utensils and began to cook. At their level, they had already used the top resources of their respective continents to create their own kitchen utensils. All of them did was to keep up with Bu Feng's pace. Niu Han-san rolled his eyes. He seemed to want to cook something as well. When it came to food, he might not be as good as Bu Feng and the others. However, dark cuisine, Niu Han-san raised his eyebrows slightly and smiled wickedly. Who's afraid of who? In front of the restaurant, the 4 apprentice chefs stood in an orderly manner. Spatulas flew, black pots rolled, and stoves rumbled. The 4 apprentices got into formation and began to cook at the same time. Lord Go and the others watched with great interest. They felt sad for the soul demons in the distance. One chef was enough to make them suffer so much that they wished they were dead. This group of chefs, they were probably going to destroy heaven and earth. Chapter 1773. To soul demons, chefs were simply nightmarish existences. To them, the food cooked by chefs was extremely disgusting. Perhaps the soul god's sense of taste had gone awry when he gave birth to soul demons. Dark cuisine, which humans found disgusting, was a supreme delicacy to soul demons. The point was, to soul demons, these disgusting dark cuisines were delicious and deadly. That was the scariest part. Therefore, the soul demons' disgust for chefs came from the bottom of their hearts. Dark cuisine was something that people would be scared of just by hearing its name. However, they could not resist the temptation of dark cuisine, which made them very uncomfortable. They felt pain and happiness at the same time, and then, conquered by the dark cuisine, they would die. Bu Feng said that he alone could match an army. If he had his apprentices, it would be a nightmare for the soul demons. In midair, a group of soul demons swooped down from the sky. Their eyes widened, and then they stopped moving and retreated like birds startled by the mere twang of a bowstring. They all had lingering fears about dark cuisine. With dark cuisine, Bu Feng had single-handedly stopped an entire army of soul demons, fought against an army of 100,000, and even killed many of them. This time, although Bu Feng did not cook, the soul demons felt their hair stand on end. However, the row of chefs lined up in front of the restaurant made the soul demon's hair stand on end. With his hands clasped behind his back, Bu Feng walked calmly in front of the restaurant. He did not plan to cook this time. He had just cooked a dish from the god of cooking's menu. and the energy in his spirit, still needed to recover. He could make use of this opportunity to test his apprentices. Foxy landed on the ground. Now, Foxy had become golden and dazzling, turning into a noble golden fox. She landed on Bufong's shoulder and blinked her big, lively eyes. Bufong glanced at little who was lying on his shoulder, and fell silent for a moment. He was silent for a long time, recalling the image of heaven god destruction he had imagined. He should be an overlord who could crush mountains and rivers with a stomp, shatter stars with a roar, and collapse the void with a flick of his tail. Then, he looked at little Hu. For Bufong, the impact was enormous. Hutu, Yu, and the others gathered in front of the restaurant. The cooking of Xiao Xiaolong and the others also attracted their curiosity. Bufong's culinary skills were superb. What about his apprentices? His cooking skills shouldn't be bad either. Many people narrowed their eyes with curiosity. Holding little Hu in his arms, Bufong sat on the stairs in front of the restaurant. He grabbed the golden soul meatballs from the basket and stuffed them into little Hu's mouth. At the same time, he watched Xiao Xiaolong and the others cook. He was curious about what kind of dark cuisine his apprentices could come up with. You and the others now know what dark cuisine is, so they're all looking forward to it. Voila! Xiao Xiaolong took out a huge goat stomach. The latter rubbed his palms together. Using a kitchen knife to empty the goat's stomach, Then he imitated Bufong's technique and spun the kitchen knife. He took out a goat's internal organs and quickly cut them into pieces. These pieces, such as the goat's heart and the goat's liver, were all finely chopped. Xiao Xiaolong's eyes shone. When he cooked this dish, he was happy and excited. Which chef didn't have a demon in their heart? A chef who let go of himself was the scariest. Xiao Xiaolong's eyes shone. When he cooked this dish, he was happy and excited. At this moment, Xiao Xiaolong had let go of himself. The goat's stomach bulged as it was stuffed. After covering the goat's stomach, Xiao Xiaolong stretched out his palms. Energy was moving rapidly in his palms. Every time his palms hit the goat's stomach, it would shake unceasingly. Boom, boom, boom. Every loud sound was like a tremor that smashed into one's soul, causing one's heart to tremble with fear. What was he planning to do? Everyone's faces were strange. Even Bufong had a suspicious look on his face. Bufong was sure that he didn't teach Xiao Xiaolong such a dish. It must be a dish that Xiao Xiaolong came up with after he let go of himself. His apprentices had demons living in their hearts. Xiao Xiaolong opened the goat's stomach. He took out the spices. Not just spices, but all kinds of seasonings. Sour, sweet, bitter, spicy, and spicy. He put all kinds of seasonings into the wok. On the other side, Xiao Xiaolong's black wok was still boiling the broth. It was a broth made from a goat leg. The milky broth was boiling, and seafood was added to it. A big piece of ginger was added to remove the mutton's odor. It was hard to associate such a rough and wild cooking method with Xiao Xiaolong's exquisite face. Sizzle, sizzle. After opening the goat's stomach, Xiao Xiaolong's eyes gleamed with excitement. His spatula moved quickly, scooping up a spoonful of broth and pouring it into the goat's stomach. Gurgle, gurgle, the goat's stomach wriggled. As the broth was poured into it, it slowly bulged. Xiao Xiaolong didn't mind it at all. He used a rope to tie the goat's stomach tightly. Then he held the goat's stomach with both hands, which was clapping like a ball. His divine power surged. Gurgle, gurgle. The broth in the goat's stomach was boiling, constantly hitting the walls of the stomach, making the raw meat inside solidify at a speed visible to the naked eye. What's he doing? So disgusting. Can this thing be eaten? Isn't it just a hodgepodge? In the restaurant, Lord Go and the others were dumbfounded, while Hades' era had a look of disgust on his face. It was a dark cuisine, but why was the death spicy strip so outstanding? Perhaps this was the difference between an apprentice and a chef. Bufong was quite interested. Hades' era and the others didn't know how to cook, but Bufong did. Xiao Xiaolong's dark cuisine was very creative. Finally, Xiao Xiaolong seemed to have finished cooking. He opened the goat's stomach and poured the divine power liquid drop that Bufong had given him into it. After stirring it, he stuffed the entire goat's stomach into the freezer. After a while, he took out the chilled goat's stomach. Xiao Xiaolong held the kitchen knife and cut down along the wall of the goat's stomach. With a ripping sound, he peeled the goat's stomach apart. Instantly, the crystal-like pudding emerged from the goat's stomach. Dark cuisine, goat stomach pudding, done. Xiao Xiaolong rubbed his hands, his eyes shining with excitement. The corner of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. The people around him were also dumbfounded. What kind of operation was this? Using the goat's stomach to make pudding? Looking at the pieces of goat internal organs floating in the pudding, just looking at it made people's stomachs churn uncontrollably. When they thought about how the pudding came out of the goat's stomach, they felt their stomachs churn as if it was a terrible torture. Besides Xiao Xiaolong, Yu Fu, Yang Meiji, and Sorceress and Sheng also began to cook dark cuisine. Perhaps it was because the three of them were girls, but the dark cuisine they cooked was so exquisite. Yu Fu's dark cuisine, it was gentle, that's right, gentle. It didn't look scary, and it didn't have Xiao Xiaolong's darkness that made people nauseous. It was a very gentle cuisine. Abyssal chili sauce durian. The essence of the golden durian, which was abundant in the heaven and earth farmland, was simmered for 10 minutes before it was taken out of the pot. Then, it was placed on a delicate plate to make the durian look extraordinary. Because of the slow simmering, the durian's flavor spread freely. Of course, the most soul-enhancing step was to pour the abyssal chili sauce. This abyssal chili sauce, which had been used by Bu Fong to perfection, had now become the specialty of Yu Fu, the Serpentine Queen. The scarlet abyssal chili sauce, in which there were minced chili dices, was poured over the golden durian. It made people's souls tremble. The corner of Bu Fong's mouth twitched, as expected of his apprentice. She really let herself go. Even a good girl like Yu Fu could come up with such a soul-shocking dark cuisine. Durian with chili sauce, she was probably going to ascend to the heavens. Sorceress and Sheng was indeed worthy of her title. Her dark cuisine made Bu Fong's scalp explode. It was a piece of cheese. That's right, it was a dairy product. However, the triangular piece of cheese was stuffed with small nuts. Bu Fong didn't know what kind of nuts they were. These are exploding nuts. One of them can blow up an entire city. Sorceress and Sheng blinked her big eyes, her breasts bouncing up and down. She covered her mouth and laughed like a soul singer. The corner of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. I told you to let yourself go, but you really want to ascend to the heavens. Bu Fong turned to look at Yang Meiji's stove. Yang Meiji's tall and sturdy body was slightly crouching. He didn't know what kind of dark cuisine she was cooking. From time to time, Bu Fong could see Yang Meiji's shoulders shaking. It looked a little scary. Lord Go and Hades' era couldn't help it anymore. One man and one dog were squatting in the corner, emptying their stomachs. Yu and the others also turned pale. Xiao Ai pulled Yu's sleeve. Your Excellency Nethery. No wonder Her Majesty said that chefs are scary. Her Majesty didn't lie to me. Bu Fong didn't know what to say. These apprentices had really inherited his innate talent. They were really good at cooking dark cuisine. Nyohan San was also cooking dark cuisine at the side, but he was obviously more unfamiliar with it than the others. However, the excited expression on his face made Bu Fong's hair stand on end. This guy was definitely going to cook something amazing. When the apprentices sprinkled Bu Fong's divine power into the dark cuisine they were cooking, Bu Fong's eyes widened. Their dishes were finished one after another. Xiao Xiaolong held a crystal pudding ball in his hand, in which all kinds of goat organs were floating. Yu Fu held a bowl of durian with abyssal chili sauce, covering her mouth and giggling. Yang Meiji laughed loudly, holding a plate of steak in her hand. A cooked steak with traces of blood visible to the naked eye. And on top of it was a layer of dead, fiery red ants. Soul fire ant steak. Sorceress and Sheng laughed with her hands on her hips, her chest rising and falling. Her dark cuisine, popping nut cheese, could be considered a very good dark cuisine. Nyohan San finally finished his work. He wiped the beads of sweat off his forehead and grinned. He flipped his hand and held a huge white porcelain plate. On top of the plate, there were pieces of crab-like ingredients that were fried upside down on top of the plate. It's a very normal dish. Bufong was slightly taken aback. This dish is called fried death spirit spider. It's a rare spider species that Nyo Han-san, have bred through crossbreeding. It tastes sweet in the mouth and has a faint paralyzing effect. Nyo Han-san grinned. Crabs. The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched. He did not believe Nyo Hansen's words. Bufong waved his hand and wrapped the dark cuisine with a liquid drop of divine power. Bufong finally understood how terrifying the chefs were after they let themselves go. For the first time, he felt sorry for those soul demons. These various dark cuisines are going to wipe out the soul demon bloodline. Bufong seemed to have sensed the despair of the soul demon army in advance. Chapter 1774. Very good. The only criterion to test the dark cuisine is its lethality to soul demons. The corners of Bufong's mouth twitched slightly as he looked at the apprentices, who were glowing. Oh, lethality to soul demons? The apprentices froze for a moment. Then they focused their eyes and turned to look at the monsters hovering in the distance. Perhaps those were the soul demons Bufong mentioned. Now, show me your dark cuisine, said Bufong. The apprentices looked at each other. The next moment, they became excited. Xiao Xiaolong ran into the distance with his crystal pudding in one hand. Then, he took a step forward and soared into the sky. Xiao Xiaolong held the crystal lamb stomach pudding in one hand and dashed into the distance. He took a step forward, and his figure suddenly soared into the sky. Rumble. Holding the crystal pudding with one hand, Xiao Xiaolong ran into the distance, took a step forward, and soared into the sky. Boom! With one slash, everything seemed to become extremely slow. The pudding began to tremble violently, and then it was cut into countless pieces by the knife. The knife covered the pudding. The next moment, thousands of pieces of pudding whistled through the air and rushed toward the thousands of soul demons hovering in the distance. The next moment, thousands of puddings flew whistling through the air toward the tens of thousands of soul demons hovering in the sky. The next moment, thousands of pieces of pudding flew whistling through the air toward the thousands of soul demons hovering in the sky. Xiao Xiaolong turned into a stream of light and sped toward them. Xiao Xiaolong grinned with an excited look on his face. Of course, he was also a little doubtful, because he was not sure if his pudding had any effect on the soul demons. After all, the strength of the soul demons present was not weak, and none of them was weaker than him. He might have some confidence in fighting two of them at once, but to fight thousands of them at once, forget it. However, since Bufong said that the dark cuisine had a restraining effect on these soul demons, he would give it a try. As the pudding sped through the air, the internal organs of a sheep seemed to twist and shake. A piece of pudding approached a soul demon, whose eyes widened in an instant. He wanted to refuse, but he struggled and waved his hand. He knew how terrifying these foods were. Many of his companions had died of spontaneous combustion after eating them because they could not refuse them. This soul demon did not want to die. He still had a bright future ahead of him. However, the bouncing pudding seemed to exude a fatal temptation, making him unable to shift his gaze away. His eyes kept moving along the pudding, as if a demon was about to crawl out of his heart. You can't eat it. You absolutely cannot eat it. The soul demon's eyes were bloodshot. All food was evil. But the fragrance of the pudding made him unable to extricate himself. The cold air on the pudding seemed to freeze his soul. Oh, the soul demon's eyes widened because he found that he had already bitten the pudding. The moment it entered his mouth, it enveloped his taste buds. The pudding melted and flowed into his mind. Her heart felt like it was going to melt. Delicious. It's delicious. The soul demon wept. Boom. In the next moment, tens of thousands of flames erupted from his body and engulfed him in an instant. Some soul demons resisted the temptation and refused the pudding. Perhaps some soul demons simply repulsed her, so they resisted the temptation. This made Xiao Xiaolong feel a little regretful. Perhaps this was the gap between him and Bufang. No soul demon could refuse Bufang's dark cuisine. Yu Fu's snake tail twisted, and she soared into the sky. She gently tossed out the chili durian. One serving, another serving, and another serving, the sky was filled with chili durians. The stench and the spiciness were mixed together, pungent and heavy. Although this dish did not look disgusting or horrible, its content was the most terrible among all the dark cuisines. Chili durian? Why didn't he go to heaven? At the very least, many people in front of the restaurant covered their mouths with their hands. Damn it, this is a war with a taste. Compared to Xiao Xiaolong's lamb stomach pudding, Yu Fu's dark cuisine seemed to be more lethal. The main reason was that it was much more tempting to soul demons than the stomach-nourishing pudding. Xiao Xiaolong was dumbfounded. Damn it, this doesn't make sense. Why do these soul demons prefer such a disgusting thing? Xiao Xiaolong looked indignant. He hurriedly tossed out the pudding. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched slightly. Xiao Xiaolong still had not fully understood the true meaning of dark cuisine. The more terrifying the dark cuisine was, the harder it was for soul demons to resist it. There was no doubt that Yu Fu had the absolute advantage in the first confrontation. Slurp, slurp. A soul demon's face was covered with chili oil and durians, but his expression was one of uncontrollable enjoyment. Am I F** king poisoned? The soul demon refused in his mind as he ate. However, as the chili durian entered his stomach, he felt as if his stomach had been sublimated. The fragrance and the spiciness complemented each other. This is a supreme delicacy. After taking the last bite, the soul demon could no longer control himself, and crimson flames burst out of his body. Soul demons were everywhere. Unable to control themselves, they were engulfed and killed by the dark cuisine. Of course, they were happy before they died. They gradually disappeared in the midst of the delicious food. In fact, the most lethal dish was Sorceress and Sheng's explosive cheese. She was stuffing explosive nuts into her cheese. As soon as the soul demons bit into them, the exploding nuts exploded in an instant, blowing their bodies to pieces. This feeling was unprecedented. The soul demons were a little confused. Before they could understand what was happening, they were already dead. The explosions in the sky continued to ring out. Everyone could not help but suck in a cold breath. These chefs were really the nemesis of soul demons. There was no doubt that the winner of this tasty battle was these chefs. It was Bufang and his apprentice chefs. Nyohan-san felt a little regretful. His fried spirit spider did not seem to be able to crush the soul demons. He could not believe that those soul demons could restrain their desires. Compared with Xiao Xiaolong and the others, his dark cuisine was the worst. In fact, it was even weaker than Xiao Xiaolong's pudding. Nyohan-san was inexplicably disappointed. I can't afford to offend them. I'd better go back to the heaven and earth farmland and continue experimenting with hybridization. It's still the chefs who cook. Boom, boom, boom. In the sky, the soul demons kept exploding like gorgeous fireworks. The group of people in front of the restaurant was dumbfounded as they watched. Huto opened her mouth, somewhat surprised. A few chefs had crushed and repelled the invincible army of soul demons that dominated the universe. That was a little too fearsome. Were all chefs so unreasonable? In midair, Envy Great Soul Overlord's eyes almost popped out of their sockets as he watched. The army of soul demons is so weak. These damn chefs. Duchess Yunlan, on the other hand, was very excited. The top soul overlords who had besieged her were now flustered because of the dark cuisine. So, she felt much more relaxed at the moment. On the other hand, she was able to fight Envy Great Soul Overlord evenly. In the restaurant, Huto breathed a sigh of relief. She did not expect that Bufang had really found a bunch of reliable chefs. Xiao AI, who was standing next to you, also could not help but open her mouth wide. Bufang put his hands behind his back and glanced indifferently at Xiao AI. As you wish, reinforcements are here. Are you convinced by these reinforcements? Xiao AI's body shook, and she quickly nodded like a chick pecking at rice. Yes. Honorbu, you're amazing. Do you still need apprentices? Xiao Ai's eyes were shining like stars. Forget it. You're not talented enough. Bu Fong shook his head. Don't. I Xiao Ai can sing Twinkle, 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 Little Star. Xiao Ai said, puffing out her chest. You was so amused that she could not help but cover her mouth and laugh. Hades Era and Lord Go could not help but smile as well. This subordinate of Netheries is really silly and adorable. She only saw the moment when Bu Fong's apprentices showed their strength, but she did not see when they were tortured by Bu Fong. She's still too young. Bu Fong ignored Xiao Ai. This was because the situation in the sky had changed drastically. The army of soul demons was beginning to collapse. Bu Fong's ability to cook dark cuisine alone might be limited, but with the help of his apprentices, his speed and number were much higher. The so-called army of soul demons was really not a problem for them. Under the bombardment and suppression of the dark cuisine, the army began to flee in disarray. Under the bombardment and suppression of the dark cuisine, the army began to flee in panic. They were defeated in an instant, and one by one, they fled as fast as they could into the distance. They had no choice but to flee. Otherwise, they would die. Do you see your other brothers and sisters? They have all been killed because they could not resist the temptation. Envy Great Soul, Overlord roared. However, he could not control the defeated army. The army fled like crazy, flying into the distance at full speed. They were defeated, and each of them was utterly defeated. They came valiantly and energetically, but now they were fleeing like stray dogs. The dark cuisine hovering in midair scared them out of their wits. It was 2F** King scary. Marquis Langu, Master Jinyong, Viscount Ash, and the other experts who were now in Yu's camp landed one after another. Their faces were full of strange expressions. They looked at the four figures in the sky. They were Bu Fong's apprentices, who were only God Emperor. But they had so many saints of the Great Path and chaotic saints, but they were no match for four chefs. Envy Great Soul, Overlord sent Duchess Yunlan flying with one blow. He roared and tried to flee. At this moment, Lord Go and Hades Era teleported over and blocked his way. It's over. Envy Great Soul Overlord was shocked. We was stopped by Lord Go and Hades Era. He had a bad feeling. A duke and two heaven gods. Even he would have a headache dealing with such a lineup. Run. Envy Great Soul Overlord thought without hesitation. Then, he turned into a plume of black smoke and rushed toward Soul's army. It was not easy to kill a Great Soul Overlord. If he wanted to leave, it would be difficult for him to stay, especially when the other party had already steeled his heart to escape. Lord Go's paw fell and slapped Envy Great Soul Overlord. Hades Era whipped him with a golden spicy strip, causing Envy Great Soul Overlord to scream and tremble. Duchess Yunlan also made a move. Half of Envy Great Soul Overlord's body exploded. However, this kind of injury did not make him stop. He was still determined to run forward. The soul demons around him were either killed or wounded. When some of the stronger soul overlords saw that the situation was not good, they fled and joined the army. There was no doubt that the restaurant had won the battle. The reason for the victory was just a few chefs. Xiao Xiaolong clenched his fists excitedly. These are the soul demons. They are too weak. Yu Fu and the others nodded in agreement. Now that their cultivation levels were higher, they understood the fighting prowess of a higher level. Above the God Emperor were the saints of the Great Path and chaotic saints. It was very difficult for them to reach this level, and they might need a lot of accumulation. After all, their cultivation bases could improve so fast because of Bu Fong's breakthrough, which had caused the will of the heaven and earth farmland to change, causing their cultivation bases to skyrocket. However, the saints of the Great Path and chaotic saints were not that powerful. They could be solved with a dark cuisine. In the future, if you meet a saint of the Great Path other than a soul demon, run as far as you can. Bu Fong glanced at the apprentices, who seemed to be overconfident, and could not help but twitch his mouth. Duchess Yunlan and the others also landed. She looked at Bu Fong in surprise. Fong, and 4 apprentices. With such a lineup, they probably had the guts to invade the Soul Demon universe. Duchess Yunlong looked at you and Hudu and was about to say something. Suddenly, her expression changed dramatically. She turned her head and looked in the direction of the cursed goddess palace. There, the towering statue of the cursed goddess exploded and fell to the ground. Terrible smoke and dust billowed, destroying heaven and earth. What really surprised Duchess Yunlong was not this. Instead, all of a sudden, an extremely powerful aura erupted from the cursed goddess palace. It was as if a supreme aura was spreading from the depths of the universe, and the whole Void City had come to life at this moment. The Queen of Curses has shown up. Chapter 1775. Rumble. The Queen of Curses' guardian, the silver-haired woman, was pierced by countless scorpion tails. Blood trickled down her body and almost dried up. Her eyes were dull, and she leaned against the broken statue of the Queen of Curses. Her breathing was very weak. In the distance, Duchess Nightmare hissed. Her body was also covered with wounds. Gluttony, Great Soul Overlord, and the other top soul overlords had put a lot of pressure on her. Coupled with the pressure from the army of soul demons, she felt as if she was carrying a great mountain on her back. The discomfort and pain were simply irresistible. In the dilapidated square, Greed, Great Soul Overlord walked toward her step by step. His long scorpion tail lifted the silver-haired woman's body. Her body was extremely broken, and her cursed power had dimmed, while the power of sin was spreading. Cursed Goddess Soul stood in the distance with her eyes drooped. She did not say anything, for she did not know what to say. Perhaps she felt a little guilty, but the guilt was soon washed away. If one wanted to sit on the throne of Void City, someone had to be sacrificed. The silver-haired woman's breathing was weak, but she stared coldly at Soul. The look in her eyes made her hair stand on end. What are you looking at? It's time for someone else to take over Void City. Greed, Great Soul Overlord sneered. He raised a hand, grabbed the silver-haired woman's head, and squeezed it with his huge palm as if to crush her head. In the distance, after killing a few top soul overlords, Duchess Nightmare was seriously injured by Gluttony, Great Soul Overlord. Coughing blood, she flew backward and smashed to the ground. You have no chance to turn the tables. The other 2 cursed goddesses are cowering and afraid to come out. Who else can the Queen of Curses choose but Soul to inherit the throne? Greed, Great Soul Overlord grinned, revealing his sharp teeth. He glanced at the broken statue, then at the palace with its tightly shut doors. His eyes gleamed fiercely. No one can save you now. Greed, Great Soul Overlord roared with laughter. He began to exert more force in his palm. The silver-haired woman's head began to deform, but her eyes were still fixed on Soul. Duchess Nightmare's eyes were full of reluctance. Rumble, suddenly, there was a commotion in the palace with its tightly shut doors. Then the door seemed to open. With a creak, a crack appeared on the door. An extremely majestic aura surged out from the crack. It was like floating dry ice. That was the power of the curse. An extremely dense curse power, as if it was the source of the river of curse. There were also drops of liquid floating in the gas. Then, it was as if celestial music was playing in unison. The sound of gongs and drums filled the air. Everyone was stunned. Gluttony, Great Soul Overlord's pupils constricted. Greed, Great Soul Overlord's heart tightened. The silver-haired woman, who was barely breathing, raised her head slightly. There was a glimmer of hope in her eyes. Duchess Nightmare was overjoyed. She knew that the Queen of Curses would never give up Void City. The soul demons in the sky did not dare to move. The aura emanating from the existence behind the door was like the will of the universe descending upon their bodies, binding them and making them unable to move. That feeling was extremely terrifying. It was as if that existence could erase them into nothingness with just a thought. The Queen of Curses. There was no doubt that the existence behind the door was the Queen of Curses. She stood at the peak of the universe, and was on the same level as the soul god. Gulp. Many soul demons fell to the ground and did not dare to move. Cursed goddess, Soul opened her mouth wide and stared blankly at the palace. She felt as if her neck was being strangled, and it was difficult for her to breathe. She never thought that the Queen of Curses would appear. Rumble. Greed, great soul, overlord loosened his grip. The silver-haired woman fell to the ground. She coughed up blood, but she burst out laughing. It was a mocking laugh. Duchess Nightmare staggered to her feet and glanced coldly at the soul demons. Now that the queen has appeared, all these soul demons must die. Tap, tap, tap. The sound of faint footsteps rang out. Then behind the palace, an indifferent voice rang out. All of you get out of here or die. The voice was cold and emotionless, but it sent chills from the soles of their feet to their heads. All the soul demons felt as if their hearts were about to explode. Hearing that, they retreated frantically, turned, and were about to flee. Greed, great soul, overlord knew very well how terrifying the Queen of Curses was. After all, she was a supreme existence on the same level as the soul god. Without hesitation, he threw the silver-haired woman aside, turned, and fled. Taking advantage of the fact that the Queen of Curses had not started a massacre, he fled frantically from Void City. Who said the Queen of Curses was seriously injured and fell into a deep sleep? Who said the Queen of Curses was on the verge of death and was looking for an heir? Everything is King nonsense. The soul demons retreated into the distance like a receding tide. The silver-haired woman's laughter echoed wantonly in the void. Looking at the retreating soul demons, Duchess Nightmare felt very pleased. At this moment, Soul was a little confused, a little flustered, and a little desperate. She did not seem to expect the Queen of Curses to appear. Let's go. Greed, great soul, overlord appeared at Soul's side and said, if the Queen of Curses attacked, they would definitely die. There was no way they could run. The Queen of Curses was no longer on the same level as a chaotic saint. Soul was pulled by Greed, great soul, and retreated with the tide of soul demons. Wait. Suddenly, a loud bellow shook heaven and earth. Gluttony, great soul, overlord narrowed his eyes and said coldly, oh. As soon as his voice rang out, all the soul demons paused. Gluttony, are you crazy? Are you going to stay here and wait for death? Greed, great soul, overlord hissed. He had thought that the Queen of Curses was still asleep, which was why he dared to act so presumptuously. But now, the Queen's awakening scared him out of his wits. Don't you think it's strange? If the Queen really wanted to kill us, we would have died long ago. Why would she let us escape? We've almost destroyed Void City, Bufong said. Gluttony, great soul, overlord hovered in midair and said. He felt that something was strange about this. The Queen of Curses did not come out of the palace. There must be something strange about all this. Could it be that there was something wrong with the Queen? That was possible. If that was the case, they might have a chance to conquer Void City. This was too bold. This was too crazy. This was a gamble with their lives. Greed, great soul, overlord's pupils constricted. Looking at Gluttony, great soul, overlord, his barbed scorpion tail curled up. However, on second thought, he seemed to agree with Gluttony, great soul, overlord. With the Queen of Curses' ferocious reputation, they should not have a chance to walk out of Void City alive. Could it be? Was it really as Gluttony, great soul, overlord said? Duchess Nightmare and the silver-haired woman paused, and then their expressions changed dramatically. They also thought of the same question. The reason why Void City had become a place of exile for many universes and no one dared to cause trouble in it was because of the Queen of Curses' decisiveness in killing. However, this time, the Queen of Curses actually told these soul demons to get out of here. There was something strange about this. In the distance, a whistling sound rang out. Bufong and the others were flying over. Utu and the others had also arrived. The void was crowded with soul demons, and the door of the Queen of Curses' palace was ajar. Where was the Queen of Curses? Bufong looked around curiously. Yu and Hutu also appeared. In midair, Soul's pupils constricted slightly. I'll say it again. Get out of here or die. A cold voice rang out from the Queen of Curses' palace again. In midair, Envy Great Soul Overlord also flew over. The three Great Soul Overlords gathered in midair. Gluttony Great Soul Overlord glanced at Bufong and the others, then at the Queen of Curses' palace. His eyes grew cold. There's no turning back now. I like to see if the Queen of Curses has really awakened. A mighty power of sin suddenly exploded out of Gluttony Great Soul Overlord, and a shadow of a fierce beast that looked like a Tautai emerged behind him. Then, he streaked across the sky and approached the towering palace in a flash. Everyone turned pale with fright. Greed Great Soul Overlord's pupils constricted. However, he did not move. Envy Great Soul Overlord was dumbfounded. The surrounding soul demons also held their breaths. As Gluttony Great Soul Overlord approached, the figure in the Queen of Curses' palace seemed to fly into a rage. A creak rang out. The stone door opened again. In the next moment, a fair and slender arm stretched out from the stone door. Then the arm clenched. Gluttony Great Soul Overlord, who was flying in midair, was squeezed violently and twisted in a strange way. Bam! Then, Gluttony Great Soul Overlord's body flew backward, and the shadow behind him shattered. Dripping with blood, he crashed to the ground. The soul demons were silent. A look of fear emerged in the eyes of the soul demons. Bufong sucked in a cold breath. The Xiao Xiaolong brothers behind Bufong had never seen such a scene before, and they were trembling. You, Hood too, and the other's eyes lit up. Ha ha! Sure enough, there's something wrong with you. I'm not dead. Boom! The ground exploded. Bathed in blood, Gluttony Great Soul Overlord rose to his feet and roared at the palace. He walked step by step, leaving bloody footprints on the ground. The Queen of Curses, come out! Gluttony Great Soul Overlord roared. The mighty power of sin exploded out of him and turned into a tornado. A huge Tautai that seemed to be about to devour the starry sky appeared in the starry sky. Then, he roared at the palace. Rumble, how dare you? The door of the palace opened wide. A graceful figure, who seemed to have gathered the light of the whole universe, slowly stepped out. Her long, straight, and perfect legs attracted the attention of countless people. The moment this figure appeared, heaven and earth turned dark and gloomy. It was the Queen of Curses. Rumble. The figure flipped her hand and lightly struck out with her palm. The huge Gluttony Great Soul Overlord, who was about to devour the starry sky, was shattered by the palm. Bam! Gluttony Great Soul Overlord's body exploded and turned into flesh and blood that filled the sky. With just one move, a Great Soul Overlord, who was a peak chaotic saint, was killed. A terrible aura pervaded the whole Void City. The Queen of Curses. This is the mighty Queen of Curses. Envy Great Soul Overlord and Greed Great Soul Overlord were already trembling. Gluttony Great Soul Overlord is courting death. The Queen of Curses is seriously injured? Does she look like she's seriously injured? This fellow has killed all the soul demons. Suddenly, in midair, the pitch-black power of sin gathered and transformed into the weakened Gluttony Great Soul Overlord's true form. Bufong and the others sucked in their breaths. Bufong was horrified as well. She had killed a Great Soul Overlord with one palm. Was this the Queen of Curses' strength? Her strength was at the same level as the Soul God and the God of Cooking. At this moment, Bufong had an inexplicable yearning for it. Lord Go and Hades Era also clicked their tongues. They reckoned that the palm that slapped the chaos space was no stronger than this. Bufong looked at the graceful figure standing in front of the Queen of Curses' palace. She seemed to stand at the top of the universe. Oh! Suddenly, Bufong paused. Not only Bufong, but everyone else felt a little puzzled and strange. In the sky, Gluttony Great Soul Overlord, who had manifested his true form as a soul demon, burst out laughing. The Queen of Curses is nothing more than this. Duchess Nightmare, Duchess Yunlan, and the others turned pale. because standing in front of the palace was the Queen of Curses. Her body was shrinking at a rate visible to the naked eye. Finally, she let out a childish Lolita voice. "You're courting death. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."